Today, I want to talk about Overwatch, state of Overwatch, what it's like to play. And I just have one simple question for anyone who's clicked on this video. Am I the only one who finds Overwatch to be really frustrating these days? I personally cannot remember the last time I logged off of Overwatch, not because it was late at night or I had to go run errands or anything like that. It was just because I get really frustrated at the game, or maybe it's had a really tilting game and ranked. And I don't know, I love this game. Don't get me wrong. I'm a former professional player. I stream this game all the time. I have played this game for thousands upon thousands of hours. But there is just one very consistent trend in my Overwatch experience. Good games are really good, and bad games are really bad.
So far, 100% agree. Like, it frustrates me even when I play off stream, and when I play on stream, it's probably one of the most tilting experiences ever. Just especially as somebody who's a coach, even if I know what is wrong or I know what I should be doing differently, either I can't execute it or you can't control all the variables you need to win when you're playing solo queue. And then the game, especially in ranked, the way it devolves in terms of cheesing and stacking and like CC and all that. Yeah, absolutely agree with with Seagull. I don't play ranked anymore. It's not good for my mental health.
And I think this is the fundamental issue behind Overwatch currently. We need to figure out a way to
Is it loud
normalize the
enough for you
experience
guys?
a little bit more, so that way when I click on the Overwatch rank button, I don't have to have a coin flip on whether or not I'm going to have fun. And this is coming from a person who's a professional streamer, a former pro player, right? I can't imagine what the average player looks like who only has like a couple hours a day to play this game. Do they even want to do that coin flip anymore, or do they just want to go load up an MMO or Battle Royale or some other game? Because personally, I'm kind of exhausted about it. I'm a little bit burned out. And I think there's a few design points of Overwatch that make me feel this way, and I kind of want to talk about those. First is
So before we get into like the things that Seagull wants to do about the game, he's probably going to take a different approach to this than I am. The one thing that playing ranked frustrates me to basically no end. It's an annoying experience. It's a joke compared to what the pros play. It's completely different from competitive 6v6 play. And when I play on a team, when I play in a six stack, when I play in pugs, I do have fun. I do have fun and I don't leave tilted. It's a much better environment. So there are ways in which you can have fun at all levels in Overwatch. It's just that those ways that you have fun do not involve the ranked process at all. At fucking all. So, yes, but the way that I've kind of like managed that and wanted to move things toward is I like to encourage people to join in pugs, to join tournaments, to, appreciate the game from a team perspective, not as an individual perspective. And that's why recently we've put so much effort into pugs and promoting them at all level, into tournaments and making sure that those tournaments are welcoming to people who, as individuals, and even those who don't have pre-made six-man teams. Like the Get Good tournament, for example, is all about that. You join as an individual, a team is made for you, no effort involved, and you compete as a team. And we have a large amount of people who go into that tournament, come out the other end with their team, and then they stick together as a team. Just taking that first step and experiencing competitive Overwatch is hard, and it's kind of like the entire basis of what I want to help and have happen within our community here. So that's kind of how I solve the problem. It's definitely a problem, but that's kind of like how my approach is to it. What's Seagull's approach?
the issue I want to talk about is the issue of hard counters at Overwatch. Just a few examples. Let's say you're playing Tracer and they pick Brigida, you got to swap or you lose. Let's say they have a Deathball composition, 3 tanks, 3 supports, and you don't have a Somber Doomfist for DPS. You either mirror or you lose. And my question is just, when did Overwatch become this way, where we started having almost too many hard counters in the game? Because, just go back a couple years, right? Reinhardt versus McCree. The McCree wants to flashbang the Reinhardt, right? So he wants to throw the flashbang over the shield, and maybe the Rein predicts that, right? And so the Reinhardt can tilt their shield up to block. And then if the McCree's really good and he predicts that, he can juke it, right? And throw the flashbang at his feet, right? As the Rein tilts the shield up, and then boom, gets a stun. Or how about, another
I think he
example
means
of good
skill-based
counterplay in
matchups is
Overwatch
what he
would
wants
just
more
be
of so far.
Ana versus Winston, right?
Yeah, that's a great
Winston's
example.
jumping the Ana, and he's going to try and predict the Ana sleep dart with his bubble. And the Ana has to try and hit that sleep dart, and that's her main protection against Winston. Compare that to Doomfist presses Q, and you're an Ana these days. What do? You don't do anything. And I guess my main concern with Overwatch is, when did we go from this depth and this nuance in the gameplay, right? Where we have this system of, they do this and I can do this. And we went from that to almost like a rock, paper, scissors.
It's very rock, paper, scissors.
I have a
right
spreadsheet
now.
open of the counters. I pick this. Therefore,
We
I
literally
win.
have spreadsheets
Right?
of
Here's a
counters.
couple examples. Like, if there is a high masters / GM Brigida on the other team, and you're a professional level Overwatch League Tracer player, you're probably going to swap, or else you're kind of throwing.
It's not really kind of.
And it's not. You could dodge all the stuns in the world by the Brigida, right? You can not get hit. You can get some decent pulse bombs off. You can try and stay out of her range. All this stuff, but the nature of it is, just by that Brigida existing, her passive armor that she gives via her heal, her passive aura health, how tanky she is, just the threat and the nuisance that she can zone you out, she counters you just by existing. And on the other side of that, let's look at before Brigida was added into the game for high-level players. If you didn't have a Tracer at a high level, you lost. That's why we had dive meta for a year and a half, right? And so we sort of have always had this problem in Overwatch, but maybe it's just a bit more prevalent today. And so I would like to compare that scenario to what I consider the best interaction in Overwatch, which is Pharah versus Hitscan. Like, let's say there's a Pharah on the other team. You have so many options, right? You have...
Poor apples.
You got, Soldier, McCree,
Editing,
Ana,
Pog.
Zen, if the Zen can hit their shots, Diva, Widowmaker, soon to be Ashe. There's many, many counters to the Pharah, right? But it's not like just by existing, the Pharah can't do anything. Like, I played Pharah in Overwatch League, right? So even versus her hardest counter, which would be Widowmaker, there's a lot of counterplay. Like, I can choose routes to play. I can choose angles to play. I can, even though it's not optimal, I know how to play it because there's a lot of depth to that interaction between the two counters, right? And so I consider that sort of to be the heart and soul of Overwatch.
I mean, I use this exact example with my own kind of coaching when talking about knowledge, understanding, and comprehension. Right? I use that exact matchup between Widowmaker and Pharah. Is that on paper, you know that Widowmaker counters Pharah, but then if you kind of understand why that happens, then you can also usually or should be able to figure out in what situations Pharah should be able to counter her counters, or at least get by.
In a lot of ways, where that's the depth of the game to me. And when you start implementing these hard counters into the game, it removes that nuance, and it really degenerates the game into, I pick this, therefore you have to swap or I win.
Yes, that is the game currently.
It really isn't about the gameplay anymore. And I don't want to do that. I want to play Overwatch, right? And, this video is about, let's go one step further beyond just the gameplay, right? So why is this bad for a typical ladder experience? Well, let's put it out this way. If my teammate picks a hero that I think is hard countered by one on the other team, suddenly I feel powerless. I feel that we're going to lose no matter what we do because we're at a severe disadvantage even before we even get to play the game. I'm no longer looking at the gameplay. I'm just looking at what heroes my team are picking and choosing. Like, let's say we have a Tracer and they swap to Brigida. Now I'm going to stare at my Tracer and be like, hey, can you swap or otherwise we're going to lose? And that's just how it is. It promotes toxicity towards your teammates because it makes you feel powerless. And that powerlessness makes you feel frustrated. And that frustration is pointed towards the people who are on your side. And I feel like I have to, a lot of the time, just fill out this checklist of, hey, do we have a hero composition that is viable at all towards the enemy's counters? Yes or no? And I have to go in this little form. And once we finally fill it out and we click all the boxes, then we finally get to the gameplay aspect, right? We finally get to go have some fun.
And like, I just want to emphasize how true this kind of rock, paper, scissors thing is, especially for like, I've drawn this before, but I'm going to draw it again as soon as I open up Epic Pen again. Epic Pen. So, right, you have your goats composition. So, goats. And goats comp usually counters, so this counters Brig and McCree. Brigida and McCree. Which counters dive, and the most obvious example of that is the Sombra Doom dive, and then the Sombra Doom dive can counter goats. So this is like the standard counter of circles, or circle of counters right now, and some teams, some regions, Europe puts a lot more emphasis on this, and if we look into that, there's going to be versions of goats that counter versions of goats. But if you're taking this kind of rock, paper, scissors level that happens at the composition scale with all 6 players, it's a lot different than, for example, having, if we have, let's say, Widowmaker and McCree. Now, this is going to be a pretty scuffed example, but you have Widowmaker and McCree. So this guy's got a cowboy hat, and this guy got a sniper rifle. Whee! Okay. So let's pick 3 different ranges. Let's pick 20 meters, let's pick 30 meters, and let's pick 40 meters. Okay. At 20 meters, McCree has the advantage. At 40 meters, the Widowmaker has the advantage, and at 30 meters, both Widowmaker and the McCree basically are at a neutral advantage in terms of fall-offs and their abilities and things like that. So now the other thing is that McCree has his flashbang, which helps him in close range. Widowmaker has the grapple that allows her to get to high grounds, to pull range a lot faster than the McCree, and also Venom Mine. And the Venom Mine can kind of keep her aware of flanks. So if we were to live in isolation and you have what is inherently a short-range character versus a long-range character, Widowmaker is good at long range and McCree is good at short range, but there's ways that this interaction can work in which McCree can try and make this engagement occur at a closer range, or that Widowmaker can try and have this interaction occur at longer range. And there's ways that Widowmaker can ensure that the interaction does not happen at close range. And there's a whole bunch of different pieces to that, as though McCree and Widowmaker is a good example of kind of like a skill-based matchup, or this is the theoretical matchup, is that both characters have a very distinct area where they have the advantage, and then through their brain power, they get to try and pick the engagements where they have the advantage themselves. So this kind of 2 things simultaneously having conditions where there are advantages to either of them, and part of the game is whether Widowmaker or McCree find themselves in the advantageous position, is what's better for an individual game. Whereas if you have the hard counters that exist in the pro scene right now, an individual does not have any, like, even playing this game has 0 impact. So hopefully that's kind of explaining, is that this is like, I'm just trying to demonstrate a close range class versus a long range class, is that close range classes will want to close distance in order to make their engagement favorable, whereas long range classes will want to keep their distance and kite to remain their engagements favorable. But if we have this situation which Seagull is talking about, where you have a goat, and then you have a McCree, cowboy man, right? This. Okay, so at 20 meters, who has the advantage? Goats. At 30 meters, who has the advantage? Goats. At 40 meters, who has the advantage? Goats. On Tuesdays, who has the advantage? Goats. Right? At all situations, these guys have the advantage. So that is a counter. That is a hard counter. And then the normal type of counter, or a skill-based counter, is kind of like the Pharah Widow matchup, where the Widowmaker in a void, or devoid of any other variables, the Widowmaker has the advantage. But in a game where there are real situations occurring, there is map geometry, and Pharahs can, for example, close the distance and get it at a much vertical angle. So let's take it like Widowmaker. So if we have Widowmaker here, and then Pharah's here, and you can fly because you have wings and you've got the sniper rifle. If we've got these two things, right? Assuming there's no map, nothing else, well, Widowmaker wins, right? Projectile, hit scan, headshot, splash, blah. Widowmaker's going to win. But if there's like a building here and Pharah can be like, oh, I'm sneaky, and Widowmaker is distracted by something else in the game that doesn't exist in this like void matchup thing, then Pharah can be like spamming and doing things to the team while making the Widowmaker useless, and then close the distance and be at a vertical angle where the Pharah can't shoot vertically as accurately, take her out, and then fuck everybody up. So this is an example of kind of a soft counter, where it's a soft counter in that in the majority of situations, the Widowmaker has the advantage, but there are situations and there are ways where the Pharah can gain the advantage. But in terms of the current meta, at least at the pro level, it is all about hard counters.
And
not everything is a hard counter, kind of like Moira Goats versus Zenyatta Goats. That's not a hard counter. That one is a skill-based matchup. Lol, 2 Goats compositions. It's a skill-based matchups, but it is actually. And then there's kind of, however, you can have like a scale of between soft or neutral matchups and hard counters and things like that. So not everything is hard. Not everything is, it's not like a black or white situation. There's a gradient. And even within the circle of counters that I was talking about with Goats and Brig McCree and Sombra Doomfist Dive and that type of counter circle, there are some that counter others harder than other counters. But Seagull is correct in saying that, especially with the introduction of Brigida, there are a lot more harder counters, both in terms of individual matchups because of Brigida, as well as the compositions that have developed because of those changes.
And it goes beyond just simple hero interactions too, because in the current meta, we're talking about deathball meta, right? Triple tank, triple support, otherwise known as goats. Let's say the other team goes triple tank, triple support. You don't mirror, you don't have a Sombra Doomfist. GG, it's over. Because it's just how the meta is right now for solo queue. And, well, obviously it's not every game, but I would say the vast majority of the time you will lose. But, having a severe disadvantage on hero select, that's not a fun or deep gameplay to me. That's just frustrating. And it's exacerbated by another aspect of the game, which is no stats.
Yep.
Let's say one of my teammates picks one of those hard counter heroes, right? And I don't know if they're performing well or not, but I know typically they wouldn't. And it's not like I have access to a scoreboard to see if they are performing well. So, of course, even they could be even performing well, and I'm probably going to blame them if we start losing, right? How many times does this happen in Overwatch where someone picks a slightly off meta hero and they get blamed for it, even though they're performing well? Because you don't have enough information. We're all a little bit blind.
The last time I played Overwatch, I had 3 games with 3 different May 1 tricks, and I'm just kind of like, oh, well, this isn't in any of the normal compositions. Enemies playing Goats, like, okay.
And the only way to know a lot of the time is to play the game an absolute crap ton. And a lot of people don't. And it's just, there's just a lot of different factors that come down to this counterplay issue, this hard counter issue that I think make the toxicity more rampant in a solo queue environment. And it just makes the game a little bit too frustrating. And this frustration that I find isn't just in the hard counters and the interaction between the heroes themselves, but also in the design of the heroes. I mean, just look at it this way, guys. There's been, 7 if you count Ashe, but Ashe hasn't hit ranks. But let's just ignore Ashe for now. There have been 6 heroes added since Ana was released in late 2016. So just about just over 2 years, right? So these heroes are Sombra, Orisa, Doomfist, Moira, Brigida, Hammond. These are characters that are not traditional FPS characters. Almost every single hero that has been added has CC that you can't easily counterplay, or they take your ability away to counterplay. And, when Overwatch first released, when we saw Ana, that's the direction a lot of people thought the new hero releases were going to go. And it's not what we expected to move into a lot of these CC non-FPS characters. And a lot of people talk about CC in Overwatch, and I do agree it is an issue. But I think the more fundamental issue behind these characters is you typically have to rely on teammates in order to save you from them. Let's just ignore the CC aspect. I mean, let's say Hammond comes in, he swings in and he slams on you, and you're a 200 HP squishy hero. If you don't get saved by a teammate, you're just instantly dead. Doomfist walks over, or Doomfist on high ground, right? And you have to push through a choke and you're that Doomfist on high ground. You know he's going to slam and he's going to one-shot you. What do you do? Let's say the Doomfist press is Q, and you're just a general 200 HP Ana or a Zen or a Lucio or just any generic 200 HP hero. You're just dead, right? Let's say, just look at Sombra. Sombra is a character, 0.65 second cast time, 6 second duration, silence / hack duration. That's insane, right? And if any of these characters, like if she gets that hack on you, you need a teammate, you need to be saved by your entire team, right? Or you're dead. And so a lot of these new characters that have been added to Overwatch that have become part of the meta, yeah, sure, they have the CC, and that is definitely an issue, right? People do not like to be CC'd in an FPS game, but I would say the more fundamental issue that makes it a more even bigger source of frustration is that makes you rely on your teammates in order to play the game even more. And if you don't have that teammate to save you or push out that Doomfist on high ground or this or that, then you feel even more naturally frustrated.
So his points right now are very, very true in terms of ranked. And at some point, there's just going to be this experience in ranked is going to be unsolvable. And this is also probably in part to due to like the culture of Overwatch, and that between seasons 4 and what was it, like 9 or something like that, it was Dive. And Dive at the time, it had kind of its best variant, but if you were kind of do things, you could get away with like, piecemealing different supports, like especially once Mercy came in, you could get away with kind of like swapping DPS, but more or less you could still operate as individuals. But now there's both characters individually, like Brigitte, Doomfist, and Sombra, who are all singular characters who require multiple characters to counter, which is insanely difficult in ranked. And then you also have the situation where there's some people who just have different goals than competitive players. Like if you look at, for example, the Symmetra and the Torbjorn One-Tricks, who were playing Symmetra and Torbjorn before the patch, or before they were reworked, they might have been saying like, oh, it's just because I like this hero, or this hero meshes my playstyle. The hero gets completely reworked, top to bottom, and they're still one-tricking that hero. So there's kind of like, so why are you playing that hero, and only that hero? Is it you like the design? Is there something else? But the reason why they're playing it isn't because it's their best. It's they just want to play that hero. They don't want to play as a team. They're not competitive. They don't want to try and win. They've got other reasons. So that's, again, like all of these reasons are like totally true for ranked. But then there's kind of like the solution that I have in mind and have been actively working on is getting people into pugs. Fuck ranked. Solo queue sucks. It's shit. Get onto teams. Get into pugs. Play with teams who will play as a team. Play with people who will help you survive against these people or these kind of play styles. Like, the solution is to honestly just raise your middle finger and say, fuck ranked. Join pugs. Join a team. Play in tournaments.
Right? And I think that's a pretty big issue. And not only that, but let's talk about another issue, right? Which is the current meta for a high-level solo queue environment. So I would say we had Dive for, a year and a half, maybe more. And that was a meta that was...
And, like, imagine how frustrating it must be to be a pro player. And there's a lot of teams. I don't know exactly how many teams, but there are teams. We'll just leave it that statement as there are teams. Just join a team. He says it really is that easy, I assure you. It really is that easy. But there's a lot of teams, competitor like Overwatch League teams, who mandate either a certain amount of stream time or a certain amount of practice time in ranked. So imagine if you've been mandated time by your team to practice, and the practice that they want you to do is ranked? What kind of applicable skills is that preparing you for pro games?
Only at the professional level and high-level solo queue, because it was a series of characters that relies heavily on individual skill and high levels of team coordination. So it was something you really only commonly saw in the top 500 scene, at the pro scene, GM plus, and otherwise you feel like you could probably run other comps and be just fine versus it, right? And so what happened? Well, we added Brigitte into the game. And Brigitte, she absolutely hard countered it, and I've gone over why I don't like hard counters, but she's easy to play. She dumpsters low-level players. She's kind of a noob stopper, right? And so I would say on an individual level, what was less fun for the game overall? This is talking about the complete overall player base. The dive tracer meta, or that which was only really meta for the high level players and everyone else could play whatever they wanted, or this Brigitte meta that we currently live in, where Brigitte as an individual character is a bit unfun to play against because she stuns and kind of one combos you while being super tanky and being a noob stomper. And also, she promotes deathball comps for the high level solo queue meta. And so now, traditionally, these older metas, they relied on high levels of team coordination and all of this high levels of individual skill, which is why you didn't see it too often in high level ladder, or even if it was, it wasn't super well executed. Well, deathball compositions like 3 tanks, 3 supports, or goats, as the community calls it, that's, very easy to start with. And yeah, at a high level, it's all combo based. It takes a lot of skill at the pro scene. I'm not talking about the pro scene, though. I'm talking about your average ladder game. In your average ladder game, they pick that comp, they hold W, they speed boost in, and you're dead, and there's not much you can do about it. And that's not very fun. And so what was better for the game? Was it dive, or was it Brigitte, or, which meta was more fun for the most people? I would say I think Brigitte, even though I love the fact that I don't have to play dive anymore, I think it created a more frustrating environment for the majority of the player base. And I want to talk about another issue I have with the game. And this one's probably a bit more personal to me. I don't know if many people will also share this opinion, but I figure, hey, I'm ranting, I may as well go for it. I think ultimates in Overwatch are too powerful across the board. If 20 to 30% of my overall games are unfun, I would say 20 to 30% of my team fights within every game of Overwatch are unfun. And the reason for that is typically because either my team has a major ultimate advantage or the enemy team has a major ultimate advantage, where one team or another is snowballing. And ultimates in Overwatch are very, very powerful. A lot of the time they are I win combos, right? What's a Nano Blade versus a team without support ults? That's a one team fight. What's a Graviton versus
Without
a team
support
without support ults? That's another one team fight. What's a Winston ult versus a team that doesn't hit a sleep dart or some form of CC or have a support ult? That's probably a one team fight. And
I'm surprised to hear this opinion coming from Seagull. I honestly am. I've heard of people wanting to reduce the ultimate charge to have these ultimates too often. Like if his argument was that ultimates happen too often, I've heard quite a few people suggest that maybe ultimates need to charge 10 to 20% slower, or more recently I've been hearing things like we need to remove the passive ult charge, which these arguments have more merit to them. They put more emphasis on the ultimates when you do have them. But if we kind of reduce the power of ultimates overall, ultimates are kind of one of the main things that you track and play around and have to execute and have to combo. And I feel like that's one of the major cornerstones of the entire game. So I could understand if he wanted the ultimates to be charged slower, but the actual impactfulness of the ultimates, I think, knowing that they have Winston, for example, and I remember one time we're on Gibraltar first, Seagull during a pro review was actually very, very proud of himself and the rest of the Dallas Fuel for having tracked when the Winston ult was and killed him at 95% before he could get it to stall the ult and win the game. So he was very proud of that they tracked the Winston ult, that changed their focus fire, it changed their game plan, they brought him down, and I forget, in the client, or the spectators, the Winston went down at 95 or 98%, something like that, right before he would have gotten primal. So ultimate tracking, learning how to combo your ultimates, even in GOATs at the pro level especially, maybe he's even relating this argument to only ranked, but I'm gonna listen to his argument once again. I'm just gonna go back a minute and let's listen to this argument once more.
30% of my team fights within every game of Overwatch are unfun. And the reason for that is typically because either my team has a major ultimate advantage or the enemy team has a major ultimate advantage, where one team or another is snowballing. And ultimates in Overwatch
And even if one team does have like 6 ultimates or something, there's ways that you can make them use them early or make them inefficiently or force them at times when they don't want to use them. Like, how many times, even probably in your ranked games, the call has come in like, let's force Zen ult. Right? These are things that you play around, and it's the strategic level of Overwatch.
Are very, very powerful. A lot of the time,
Even in solo queue, calls to like force Zen ults should happen very often, at least with Masters GM top 500.
I win combos, right?
Not in low ranks, but
what's a Nano Blade versus a team without support ults? That's a one team fight. What's a Graviton versus a team with no support ults? That's another one team fight. What's a Winston ult versus a team that doesn't hit a sleep dart or some form of CC or have a support ult? That's
like Seagull's saved here by implying that it's he's talking about ranked. There's so many arguments about this against not only in pro play but in Grandmaster and Master. Lower, like, not only are we talking about just ranked, but we're now talking about kind of ranks below like Master, because the thing that he's talking about, like countering grav, tracking grav, diving the Zarya first, defense matrixing, deflecting, like, how else do you survive? Do you try and get only one of your characters trapped in the grav and then you res that character? Like,
it's probably a one team fight. And for me personally, I think we need support ults to be so powerful that they practically make your team invulnerable in a lot of cases. Look at Zen and Lucio, for examples, just to stop how powerful these offensive ults are. And the issue I have with this is, if ultimates are this powerful, if both teams have ults, we're fine. If one team has a lot of ults and you don't, then you're kind of screwed. And the snowballing that it creates a lot of the time makes you feel like you're not going to have fun this next team fight. You just know that you're probably screwed, right? And so, I mean, just look at the Koth snowball win rate. And by Koth, I mean King of the Hill, control game type, Ilios, Lijiang, those types of maps, right? In Overwatch League Season 1, of the 771 recorded Koth rounds, if you won the first team fight, you won 64% of the time.
That's not...
Think about how crazy that snowball is, and that's due to ults.
If you win the first fight on control, you win 62% of the time. That doesn't seem like a crazy number. It is crazy. If you already won the first fight, there's things like it probably means you're already the better team. There's other things where if you win the first fight, there's only usually about 3 team fights in control. It doesn't seem that crazy.
That's due to the
64 is huge. Do you think that is actually statistically impactful, guys? Is 64% of control games going to the winner of the first fight? I don't know. Like, what is the way to phrase this? Is 64% of control games going to the winner of the first fight a problem? Yes? No? What do you think, chat? Because 50% is like... So the thing is, you would not expect it to be 50% because there's one team is at a distinct disadvantage, not only because they lost the first fight, because presumably the team that lost is the worst team, or the worst team overall. So 50% is what you would expect. So then there's the disadvantage that comes from, even if there was no snowball factor at all, if we assume that there's can we do the math on this? If we assume that there's 6 fights maximum possible, 3 fights for one team to win, and each fight has a 50% chance of going to either team. Could you do that? You could probably figure out statistics. Hmm. 54.36%? Somebody did the math. Interesting. Okay. Huh.
the game length of your average King of the Hill round and the average time it takes to build ults, that's because of the snowballing. And I think it's a little bit too much at times, specifically for the control game mode. But ults to me were very fun when I first started playing Overwatch, right? It's like you're new to the game, you push this button, and suddenly a lot of stuff's happening. You're racking up kills left and right. But as time has gone on, they've lost their coolness to me. I think ults are a lot of the time, I have more Qs, therefore I win. That's sort of how the gameplay breaks down to me personally. And I know what people are going to talk about, specifically pros. They'll be like, yeah,
I'm going to hold my, I just want to go on a rant. I'm like, he's talking about ranked. Stop, Jayne. He's talking about ranked.
but that's a part of the game, right? You have ult economy. You need to manage that. You have more ults or less ults. And the game comes down to using the least ults possible in all these scenarios. And yeah, I know. I mean, I was a pro. I know all that stuff and all those arguments. But in a solo queue environment, a lot of the time, obviously your teammates aren't perfect like in a pros game. The ult economy, a lot of the time, how many times have you dropped a Zarya Graviton and then two of your teammates just drop their ults instantly into it instead of just getting free kills, and then you go, oh crap, well now next team fight we're kind of screwed, right? And it reduces the nuance of the game. It reduces it to, I have a lot more Qs, therefore we win.
I don't follow that argument.
And in the pro scene, we have lots of strategies available to us, right? Like, that we don't.
It's not like don't dump literally all of your ults into a Zarya Graviton is a nuance unavailable to ranked players.
Don't have many ults available, so we need to go for a play. And these are the plays we can make in this section of the map with these ults and our common team compositions and stuff like that. There's a lot of breakdown that pros do. But in a ladder game, you don't get that as much. Typically, it'll be either someone goes, okay, I'm going to try and go for a play, and they just YOLO flank, or Ryan's like, okay, I have Shatter, they have 4 ults, I'm just going to hide and see if we get a big Shatter, stuff like that. And they're really just big gambles. That's what they fundamentally come down to. And I think a lot of the time, it just, in those 1-3, 1-4 team fights in Overwatch, you're just at a huge disadvantage before the fight even starts. And that feeling you get of powerlessness is just too prevalent in Overwatch, in my mind.
So there's two ways we can look at this. We can think about in that he's saying that ultimates are hard counters, in which we would agree with Seagull's chain of logic. And that the other way, you could say that ultimates provide an advantage, in which case it's a skill-based matchup like he wants between Pharah and Widowmaker. So it depends how you're interpreting his arguments. I think his argument makes sense if you're viewing them as if ultimates are hard counters and that you have more Qs, you win. But I don't feel like ultimates are hard counters. And I'm also of the opinion that like eco fights or dry pushes, those are things that I do not try and encourage teams to do. I don't try and pull in my ranked games or whatnot, because I think that even like you should go into every fight trying to win. If there's a very low chance, then you should kind of redefine victory and say, we should force the ultimates early or have them only grab one so that we can res, something like that. But I don't feel like it's a game of everybody lines up and then you put on blindfolds and then you decide whether you're going to press Q, and if it's 4 Qs to 3 Qs, 4Q team wins. I'm not convinced yet.
I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on the nuance of Overwatch, because that is where I consider the heart and soul of Overwatch to be. This back and forth action between heroes, coming up with strategies and plans, and then acting around them. And when ultimates are too powerful, it reduces it to, I have more Qs. If hero counters are too strong, then it comes down to rock, paper, scissors. And some of the hero designs are just like, I'm here, therefore I win unless one of your teammates does something. And all of these factors just add powerlessness, frustration, and when people feel like that in a solo queue environment, they're toxic towards each other. And I think that's a big reason why I just don't have as much fun in Overwatch these days compared to when I used to near release. And maybe a lot of these issues aren't fixable. Maybe it was just the new feeling of Overwatch that covered it up. Maybe it's because I was a pro player, I lived in this pro player bubble.
Going back from pro play to ranked play has got to be a fucking drag, man.
Team-based game in a solo queue environment with random teammates, and maybe it's just not possible to fix. But I think it is. I think you can fix it. I love this game, and I feel like I had to talk about these sort of issues, because the Overwatch community is pretty small, guys. There's seriously like less than 10 or 15 YouTubers, Twitch streamers that do this full time with big audiences. And a lot of people, YouTubers and streamers, have just quit the game to move on to greener pastures.
I'm not going anywhere, chat. You can't get rid of me.
Where does the Overwatch community really live these days? Well, it's most of the time, game communities live on Reddit, and it's like, well, Reddit for Overwatch is either silver play of the game highlights or esports drama. And I think it's important to talk about these issues, because I love games. I got into this because I
give me your
Overwatch.
solution, Seagull.
I love competing. I love learning about the games. I love talking about them. And I want to see true change for Overwatch. I don't want just another hero release or 2 or 3 hero releases per year with a couple maps and we call it good with some recycled holiday events. I want to see true change. I want to see Overwatch be better than it ever has been. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling this way about Overwatch being frustrating or tilting to play way too often. Overwatch, when it's good, is amazing, and when it's bad, is really bad. And we need to bring up the bad parts of the games. Everyone knows Overwatch is great when you have fun, and I just think we can do that. I think Blizzard can do that. I think it is fixable, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please just let me know what you think. I am very, very nervous uploading this type of content. I'm usually the guy who just chills, talks about the game on Twitch, and just hangs out, and this channel is usually for highlights, but when I said I retired from being a pro, I was serious that I wanted to put out more serious content. And this is a video that, to me, demanded to be made after so many times I'm on stream. And
I should make a video response.
Not having fun, or I'm tilted, and people are like, Seagull, why are you sad? And it used to be this sad. And I didn't know how to appropriately tell them, why don't I have as much fun anymore? And I feel like this video had to be made. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, eBay, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know what YouTubers do. They have that whole spiel. I think there's something with a bell. But I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support.
Okay, I gotta intervene. Apparently, Seagull doesn't know how to YouTube. Okay, chat. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Lay it on me. Throw your opinions. I'm gonna try and read as many as I can. I think he needs a long break from the game. Well, that's beyond the point. But Seagull on Discord? Do you want me to try and get Seagull on Discord to talk about this? Is he streaming right now? What's he doing?
Team fight, I think.
Oh, I've got a resub. Want to chat on Discord about your video? I got my 7-month resub to use for this question.
Please no grip. Please no grip.
Yoink my content now. I like his title. Q for watch it. Like with some Q and CC.
Cool fucks.
Just watched your Overwatch analysis on YouTube. I love the content and hope you do more in the future. Go get him, Seagull.
Jayne wants to talk. Why? What do you want to talk about?
Just want to see what you...
Wait, I can't talk. I was going to watch it on stream.
Oh. He was gonna... Oh, he hasn't even watched it. You haven't even watched your own video?
I haven't watched the video on this stream yet. I'm going to watch that first, and then we can talk afterwards, if you still want to talk about it. Unless you want to talk, like, right this second. But I feel awkward talking about it, because if my chat hasn't seen it, a lot of them were waiting to watch it together. Have you watched your own video? No, I just started streaming. Okay, I played, like, 2 ranked games. I don't know. Okay, watch your channel chat later. Okay, Mr. Jayne. Okay.
Hearts. Okay. He's gonna watch. He's gonna watch his stuff.
Let me catch up with subs.
Just fucking dive. Just ruined his stream. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. That's an interesting video. Interesting video. Shark Attack with the 5 months. Joe Wup with the 5 months says hashtag delete Brig. Yeah, pretty much. Improved Evasion with the 6 months says, hey, yo, 6 months going strong, boyo. QNax with the $5 says, Blizzard aims at win rates on offense, defense of 45 to 55%, and if it's outside that, they consider it broken. Yeah, but the difference between a 64 and that range is that 64% is after the first fight has been won. So that 45 to 55% has exactly no statistical relevance to the 64% stat. First team fight win puts you on defense. That means 64. No, that's not how that works. Aborted OW with the 6 months says a learning. And then Espen Okay. Oh, man. Don't forget to eBay him. Oh, yeah. I got to eBay him. Okay, so I'm going to have to... Like, there's so... Like, my main talking point response to this is me just, like, slamming the desk and be like, you know... in-client team tournaments or in-client team, like a team ladder is probably not going to work in terms of like population and imbalanced games or, you know, queue times or anything like that. Like having a 6v6 ladder mode probably isn't going to work, but like in-client 6v6 tournaments. In-client 6v6 tournaments. That's like my main hit the desk and whatnot. But even that is like a band-aid solution. Even that's a band-aid solution. Because then ranked will still exist, and ranked is still complete and utter shit. There's... that's still a thing. So, you know, there's my take on it. It's like, play pugs, play tournaments, join teams, community events, ignore ranked. It's the worst part of Overwatch. It's legitimately the worst part of Overwatch. Overwatch is fantastic if you play it like it was meant to be played. But then, even then, there's heroes that, despite them being balanced, like there's the argument, or the Decod put out the tweet a while back, right? What was Decod's tweet? I'm going to retweet Seagull's shit, and then I'm going to go to Decod's Twitter, because Decod made a pretty controversial tweet where he said, Brigitte is a necessary evil, and she is currently balanced. People just want to blink around and dive 24/7. Accept change and deal with it the best you can. So there's a couple things here. First of all, my opinion as a coach and somebody who works for a professional team, I do not give a shit about what is balanced. I do not give a shit about what is fun. The players on my team are professionals, and they are professionals at winning, and they will use any and all tools available to them in order to win. That is my perspective of it from the pro scene. I don't care if my players are having fun as long as they're winning. I don't care if the game is balanced as long as my team is winning. Now, that's a very, very extreme take on the matter. For the health of the game, that cannot be the case, because people have to have fun. So even if Decod's tweet is accurate, which it's debatable about whether or not it is accurate, that isn't something that is going to be accepted or is acceptable in terms of ranked. Is that even if Brigitte is balanced, which it's debatable, once again, that's very debatable whether or not she is, she's also extremely unfun to play against. Same with Doomfist. LOL lets me just get one shot, or Sombra, let me just get a 6-second silence, chained into an EMP, chained into another 6-second silence. I'm sure if you play D.Va out there, you've experienced that more than once. Hacked so that somebody can do something, EMP'd, and then rehacked before EMP wears off, right? Have you just ever had? Just not been able to do anything except walk around and take damage for 20 seconds? It's a pain in the fucking ass. You can't even outplay anybody. Purple fucking tickle fingers come out of God knows where, and suddenly you forget how to walk. Not fun. So, yeah. And why is my mic peaking? I don't even know. I'm screaming into my microphone, apparently. Something's gone wrong with my mic. Anyway. Purple tickle fingers. My compressor is on. I don't know what's up with it. I'm the person who does that to other people as Sombra. Yeah, like there's some masochists out there that have fun making other people not have fun. But and if that's your playstyle, that's your playstyle. But yeah, CC is not fun, even if it's balanced. So there's arguments on both sides of the case. But if we do want to have Overwatch be successful as not only a game, but also an esport, if we want, like, so, you know, the pros talk about the pro scene, and then when people bitch about ranked, they're talking about, like, but, oh, you could do this, but they're applying to tactics used at the pro scene, things that don't apply in ranked. So if we want Overwatch to be successful as an esport, it needs to be not only balanced, but fun. Sadist, not masochist? Oh, my bad. Words are hard. So, yeah, I can see where it's coming from, but what do you really do? From this point in time, my main solution, you know, make in-client 6v6 tournaments, right? In-client 6v6 tournaments. That's the main thing that I want to just like walk around with a sign and a loudspeaker's like, in-client 6v6 tournaments, woo, let's do it, woo. It's like, that's kind of something that you could do to get people to play the game, but is there a way that we can actually make ranked not shit? So at the current point in time, with the current state of characters, how do we make the game not shit for solo queue? Role queue doesn't work. Role queue, the argument for role queue is even less acceptable these days than it was in the dive meta. In the dive meta, where all variants were allowed... Don't make me ban you, Han. Never mind. A mod will ban you. Thanks. So in the metas where it was like everything was 2-2-2, all of the compositions had 2 DPS, 2 tanks, 2 supports. Role queue would have been okay, but now we're getting into things where we're 3 tanks, 3 supports, and then other compositions have like 3 tanks, 2 supports, 1 DPS, or we have the standard 2-2-2s, or we have like solo tank compositions for things, like the Chinese cheese, or something with the solo tanking Orisa, or something like that. Chinese cheese being what I'm calling the solo tank Zarya. But yeah, like there's so many different things that role queue as like the definition of role queue, every tank, what do you even define Hammond as? Like here's if we were to do role queue right now, and if you wanted to break it down into anything other than like just tank, because if you get 2 off tanks, you're still probably equally fucked if neither of them can play Winston or Reinhardt. And the community as a whole probably can't even decide whether Hammond is an off tank or a main tank. So Hammond, off tank, main tank, kind of both. So what do you think Hammond is? Do you think he's an off tank? Do you think Hammond is a main tank? Or do you think he's kind of both? Or could maybe his role change if the composition's changed? In triple tank dive, he's a main tank, is he? Against Ghost when you're playing like, Hammond and Diva, he's a main tank. But if you're playing Hammond with like a Reinhardt or a Winston, then he's an off tank. Even the characters' roles themselves change within compositions. Like take Brigitte herself, right? Brigitte is a support who at the pro level replaces a DPS. But in ranked, at least from my experience, Brigitte is so commonly run in a support slot, and we're playing shit like Ana and Brigitte. And if you're playing Ana Brigitte at the pro level, there's only legitimately one reason to ever do that, and that's if you're protecting yourself against dive on like things like Volskaya A. But then Brigitte is actually acting like a support, but in the majority of situations, Brigitte acts like a DPS. So even role queue doesn't make sense anymore. And it was always going to be kind of artificially restricting innovation, counters, potentials. If you wanted to switch between, for example, 2-2 with Ryan Zarya to 2-2 but with Winston Diva, but you're in solo queue, and for example, your Ryan player and your Winston player are different, so you have kind of 2 people who want to switch, that the one wants to go to DPS and the other one wants to go to main tank, so you'll still have like 2-2-2, then you guys would need to be in spawn and like swap at the same time, and you couldn't do transitional comps. Like it's a fucking mess if you wanted to introduce role queue. So I just don't think role queue would work anymore. So we got to figure out ways that ranked can be improved. Role queue's not going to cut it. I used to be kind of, there's some sanity checks that I would like to be implemented into the game. Like I would like if there was a sanity check that the game could be like, hey, so the matchmaker put you guys on a team together, but all of your most played is Mercy, so we're not going to make this a team. Just like little sanity checks. So kind of like don't put 3 or more people who have the same hero as their most played on the same team. Like just like fucking forehead sort of things. So you can make a smarter matchmaker without kind of directly enforcing any roles or something like that. But clans, I don't know if clans would actually fix anything. Like a smarter, more intelligent matchmaker looking at the two most played heroes and making sure that there's not a large amount of overlap between the same players on the same team. That doesn't solve one tricks. That doesn't save the problem with Goat's hard countering. It doesn't solve a lot of problems, but that would at least be like a good first step, right? I don't think clans would do anything either. Do you think roll queue could work on a 1-on-1 with 3 flex supports kind of way? Maybe. But who knows about tomorrow? Like right now, it's pretty guaranteed that you're going to have a main tank, you're going to have a main support, and you're probably going to have a DPS unless you're playing goats. So, but what about tomorrow's composition where suddenly 4 DPS becomes meta? What about the composition after that where suddenly supports are not used and it's 3 tanks, 3 DPS? We don't know what the balance of tomorrow looks like. So to artificially restrict any possibilities is something that we'd have to kind of think really seriously about. I don't know, man. Everyone's like Monk a W at 4 DPS, but how many people a year ago would have been like, yes, I can totally see 3 supports and 3 tanks being the current meta? Like, nod, smile. The current meta would have looked so fucking alien to anybody a year ago. I only play 6-stack, and Overwatch is always a blast for me. I don't experience all the pain the community describes. That's another thing. I don't have anything against stacking at all. It's more control of your teammates, less things to kind of be tilted by, less variables outside of your control. 2-stacking and 3-stacking, I don't know why you can play against 6 stacks as solo queues, because that's fucking bullshit. But 2 stacks, 3 stacks, don't allow 4 or 5 stacks at all under any circumstances. So 6 stacks either go against other 6 stacks, or 2 stacks of 3, or 3 stacks of 2. Solo queuers should never, ever go against stacks of 6. Ever. Period. Done. End of discussion. Just delete the stupid bitch. Problem solved. 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 6 stacks. No 4s, no 5s, no solo queues against 6 stacks. End of story. Simple. Simple little kind of progressive additions to the game. Playing against 6 stacks is also the worst when it's a fucking booster stack. God, I fucking hate that. It's just like, hi, I see you've actually been making some progress on your climb. Would you like to play against 6 people who are 1,000 SR higher than your current ranking? Would you like that? Here you fucking go. It's like, okay. I wasn't planning on climbing today anyway. Thanks, Overwatch. Thanks. Just one I wanted for my birthday. Oh, man. 6-stack throwers exist too? Oh, yeah, that happened. Like, Sideshow, Uber, Mr. X were in a stack together, and they kept queuing into the same 6-stack of D-rankers who would just sit in spawn. And they were like, we just want to play the game. And there's people D-ranking, and then I can't even imagine how many games that 6-stack must have destroyed. They got SR. The people who they played against got SR, but then whose games did they just fucking trash once they finished deranking? How many games does that fuck up in the ranked ecosystem? Holy moly. OG got matched with 2 diamonds today? It was probably Decay. I assume it's Decay. What about a ban phase before pick phase? I don't know. So there's a lot of... Okay, there's the other problem about the ban phase. So this was something that we experimented with the semi-pro pugs. So, like, one of the things, again, as a Band-Aid fix to the ranked problem right now, is that... so we're starting pugs for all elos. Now, Academy players and Overwatch League players kind of contractually are prevented. Why is my microphone all sorts of fucked up? Give me a quick second to try and fix this. Okay, we'll stop. Hello? Okay, good. But yeah, so we started up semi-pro pugs, which are primarily for tier 2 and tier 3 players, and we were trying to make it balanced and competitive. So one of the things that we decided to attempt was a pick phase and a ban phase, where basically blue team captain protects one hero, red team captain protects one hero, and then blue team, like, so it's protect, which means that they can't be banned. And then the next set is like a ban where they ban one hero on either side. But the problem with that is that think about how many characters right now in the game are kept in check by saying, oh, but D.Va can defense matrix. So, the amount of things that just become completely unwieldy without D.Va. So, yeah, so there's like D.Va counters a lot of stuff, and it's like 95% pick rate in the at the pro level. So there was the problems where like, yay, you know, we were attempting to bring in the ban system because it would make things more interesting and also give people a way to ban Brigitte. But then we're also like, yeah, but the game becomes complete shit when a lot of these heroes just aren't kept in check by D.Va. So D.Va also needs a competitor. That's something that I've been talking about since like the very first hero introductions, is that D.Va needs a competitor. Defense Matrix is like the strongest tanking ability in the entire game. You gave it on a tank with 600 HP, 200 armor, vertical mobility, the ability to give yourself a second life, and a potential team wipe as an ultimate. That character is fucking crazy. Character is crazy. So there's you know, on the upside of all of this, is that Blizzard and Overwatch just as a whole, they are kind of working on words are hard. Fuck. Like they're balance patches and fixes and whatnot. So if this conversation needed to happen, now was a good time for it to happen, because it's a time where Blizzard is actively focusing on trying to correct these things. So, I don't know. Solving ranked is not an easy problem. It's not an easy problem. You can't just be like, lol, there's no longer any CC in the game. Like, Ashe is a great step. Ashe is a great step forward. It has knockbacks, but not stuns. That's fine. More skill-based heroes, but you know what's not fun for Ashe? Yeah, when your opponent picks goats and just runs at you. or D.Va just defense matrixes her. Lol. Anyway. Oh, man. Okay. Is Seagull watching his video yet? Or is he still playing ranked? What's he doing?
And also...
Oh, he's watching his own video. He's watching his own video. Okay. I don't know. Let's before he gets here, chat, let's brainstorm some more ranked solutions. Share screen. I don't want to completely yoink his content there, but yeah, just restream it. Lol. Watch his video. Streamception. I don't know. More tanks and healers. Now, here's the question. Here's another question for you. Is there like too much healing? Do you think there's too much healing in Overwatch? Healing in Overwatch. Too much. Just right. Too little. Oh, I wanna actually correct this. Hide poll. The problem is armor, not healing. See what people think on this one. Oh. Wow, the amount of people voting in this poll just froze my computer. Sick. You should check the Dallas Fuel Twitter. I just saw that. Yeah. The amount of skins, or not the amount of skins, the amount of face reactions that Dallas Fuel has of me, so funny. I wonder what the Reddit comments are too. So what do you guys think? The problem is armor, not healing. Yep. I always thought that one of the biggest changes you could make to Reaper was just have Reaper Reaper already has lifesteal. Just give him the ability to ignore armor. I feel like Reaper would just eat tanks alive like he was meant to if you did that. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Is there a Reddit thread on Seagull's State of Overwatch? 321 comments already. Holy smokes. Let's see what Reddit thinks of this thread, because this ought to be fun. This ought to be fun. His point about some people only having a few hours to play and don't want to deal with the coin flip of having a good or terrible game is exactly why I don't play nearly as much as I used to. Upvote same. I only play comp when I know that I have at least 4 hours. Yeah. Unironically, the only time that I play ranked is when it was like, yeah, you know what? I got nothing to do in the morning, so if Overwatch crushes my will to live and be productive, this won't be a problem for me. Same here. When I was at university and could play like 8 hours if I wanted, I would grind some ladder because why not? But now that I come home at 19, such an old man. I really don't like tolerating all these garbage games in the hope that one of them is nice. Pugs. You could still solve these problems with pugs, right? Have much more control over getting good games. I feel maps are also a big problem with the game. 2CP is almost universally hated by higher ranked players. This is true. So in our map pick and ban phase on... our map pick ban phase in Pugs, Assault is almost universally banned. Assault maps are almost never, ever played in Pugs. So, I actually, in recent memory, can't think of a single time that Assault was played in Pugs. 2CP is always banned in Pugs. So if you hate 2CP, hey, play Pugs. Never play 2CP again. Never play 2CP again. Okay, what's the next one? I can only bring a low elo experience into this, but it's true. You end up having some games where you feel incredibly powerless to do anything, and if your teammates don't swap, you just lose. I don't know, that seems like the high elo experience as well. It's extremely painful because at low elos, not everyone knows the counters. And in Europe, where I'm based, often you just don't have a shared language where you can explain things. That sucks. That sucks. Holy moly, that sucks. How do you play Pugs? !Pugs. We stood up a Discord server, brought on a whole bunch of staff to run it. !points. Pugs, join the Discord server, or let me just make sure I'm not linking more random stuff. That's the wrong server. So if you also look into the Elo Hell channel info, there's the fucking terms of service that nobody reads anyway, but at the very bottom of the info channel on Elo Hell, there's Elo Hell pickup games, which you can join, and then there's also Elo Hell tournaments. So if you want to play in like the Get Good tournaments or anything like that, you can join these. Like 4,000 people on the Pug server and growing every day. So this is 4,000 people, and we brought this server online like 2 weeks ago or something like that. So there's a ton of people playing Pugs. Get in here. It's so much fun. Pickup games, right? Pickup games, tournaments, hell, and then ignore the rainbow keycap. You never saw the rainbow keycap. I can only bring low elo experience. Yes, it's extremely painful because at low elo, not everyone knows the counters. And in Europe, where I'm based often, you just don't have a shared language. Then everyone tilts. I feel like at the end of most Overwatch anecdotes, you could just put, then everybody tilts. And the multilingual insults start to fly out. Oh, man. When Seagull comes out with a video like this, Blizzard will pay attention. Seagull is the face. Well, yes, but that's why it's also a big risk for Seagull to come out with this kind of video. So hopefully Blizzard isn't too offended by Seagull giving them anything other than good PR. That's why I figure that's why I don't really ever end up on like streamer spotlights or anything. I'm pretty uncensored. Not only do I use profanities, but I like to kind of throw shade at people wherever I deem appropriate and wherever I also deem inappropriate. So it's good on Seagull to kind of risk his status and position in order to make a video like this. Oh man, the game is 50%, 50%, amazing, terrible. Yep. Yep, just like Blizzard paid attention to in the entire cap. Okay. Okay, what else? Threw out a stat that I'm not going to lie didn't surprise me at all, or if anything, it surprised me it wasn't worse. In OWL, the team that won the first team fight on a Koth map won that round 64% of the time. Well, yes. Anyway, and yeah. I'm still not convinced this is a valid argument. The video must have struck a nerve at Blizzard. They locked the post about it on the official forums. Oof, juicy. If anyone sees OP's comment, upvote. Blizzard are, for lack of a better term, narcissistic. Ooh, let's not get into straight up Blizzard bashing yet. Seagull hits the nail on the head here. Overwatch is amazing to play when you're having fun and terrible when you're not. It's extremely frustrating for anyone playing the latter, and it's why so many have stopped playing at some point, including me. He mentions plenty of the underlying reasons for this, like how hard counters for heroes take away the intricacies of matchups, no more back and forth. There's also the issue that there's been from the start about ultimates being so strong. So in public matches, each team fight is decided by the number of ults available. I still not 100% on board with this, because this right here is kind of what I feel differentiates between low-level and high-level play. But I'll hold my tongue on that one. Seagull says that these problems can be fixed, but to me it seems like it would require a lot of backtracking from Blizzard. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's very likely given the direction Blizzard has been going in terms of new and updated content. Actually, I do think it's likely. So Blizzard is like actively working on balancing and improvements. Unless they were talking about only optimizations and not actually balancing the game, which considering their latest patch notes, I don't think is the case. Hopefully this kind of brings this discussion to the forefront. It's also a matter of balance. People bitch and moan about balancing for the pro scene, but this is what it looks like. If dive is to be non-mandatory in pro play, then it has to be absolute garbage outside of it. If tank comps are to be viable in pro play, then they have to be way overpowered in solo queue. That is a good take. This is an underrated take. I wish I could upvote that twice. This is also a matter of balance. People bitch and moan about balancing the pro scene, but this is what it looks like. I really like this take. That is a good take. On average, a team in Overwatch League would earn close to 25 ultimates per 10 minutes. Is this too many, though? Poll time. Let's do more polls. I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this. Is 25 ultimates per minute too many? Yes? No? Start poll. What do you think, chat? 25 ultimates per minute. Okay, I'll fix the poll. Is 25 ultimates per 10 minutes too many? We can't even replicate that in a custom game. Oh, man. Mr. Death with the $10 says, Jayne, your gut feeling about the 64% advantage not being a big deal is correct. This is because people forget about the priority odds of the better team winning the first fight. That's what I was trying to say, Mr. Death. Yeah, like the 64% in a statistical world assumes that all fights are 50% one way or the other. But if you take into account that the better team should win the fight in the first place, but that also comes into questions about how statistically balanced are the teams allowed to be, how many variables can the matchmaker not take into account, and other such things. Beardless Beardman said, this is how every Rhine main feels. Thanks for the tier 3 for 7 months in a row. What is this clip? Oh, it's an xQc clip. This is going to be good.
Made by Rated Rion.
Fix the bug that prevents Ranger from traveling over certain terrain. Listen, man. I know how they're fixing glitches. We've had Rain shatter fixes every 3 months for fucking 6 fucking years. Just to recode the fucking ability, dude.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
Just let's show them.
It's not even funny. It's just so sad that it's true. Just recode it, forehead. I also like that he said 6 years. Is 25 ultimates per 10 too many? 56% say yes, 43% say no. That seems to be in line with what I think. Like if I was going to be given a decision, hey, Jayne, you are now universally in charge of whether or not we adjust ultimate charge across the board up 10% or down 10%. I'd go down 10%. So that seems like it's about where I'm thinking. But interesting. Okay. Let's take a look at this forum. Now, I definitely think official forums in any game are always cancer. Sorry, I've been told that people find me using that word colloquially as offensive, so I apologize for that. What is a better way to say that? Official forums are a cesspool of idiocy. Yeah, we'll just call it that. Seagull is ready? Okay. We'll get him on call here. Oh, man. There's like so many people named Seagull on Discord. Holy moly. I have to ping him to figure out which one he is. Seagull. You are Seagull. Message. Hi.
And I do know a lot of these things have maybe been there since the very beginning.
Okay, I send him a message on Discord. When he responds, we'll get into a call. Okay. And then we'll have a discussion about his video. And in the meantime, in Serial, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's 5,000 bits, says, I think more utility from the support slot would be really nice. 5,000 bits, dude. I really appreciate that. More utility from the support slot. I definitely don't like Moira's design from how she just shits out healing everywhere and doesn't do a lot of utility. I love Anna's kit with nano boost, with anti-nade, with sleep dart, some acceptable skill-based CC. But then Moira is, I either heal you or I damage you, and my ultimate is that I heal and damage at the same time. So I don't like Moira's design very much, but other than Moira, I think that the supports are more or less balanced. The absolute state of he's calling. Hello, Mr. Seagull.
Hello. Give me just a sec.
No rush. No rush.
All right. I think my microphone should be try talking again.
Yeah. I had toast for breakfast and it was delicious.
Dude, I personally, my favorite breakfast of all time is still Cheerios and toast, right?
Not
I
Lucio's?
love Cheerios and toast.
Not Lucio.
But the problem is, I feel hungry like 2 hours later. I don't know why. I'm just NA as hell, man.
So let's talk the video then. So what, you're not the kind of person who normally puts out videos like this. So what prompted it?
Am I? Am I not?
Well, this is a video that could certainly rock the boat.
Well, I say that because I've never been a content creator until now.
I guess that's fair. So is this kind
because as someone who was a full-time pro player, you don't have time to make content, and so your job is to get good at the game, not hang out with the community, right? And so it's now I get to make stuff. I get to talk about things I want to talk about, and I did kind of mention at the end of the video too that I was nervous about making this type of content. That is, I would say, my very first YouTube video I probably ever actually made.
It was a good one, though. It even had some nice editing in it and everything.
It was kind of scuffed, man. I don't have foam in my apartment, so when I was recording it, I had to put a blanket fort on myself and the microphone on my monitor with notes, so I would remember what I was talking about. And I just lived in a blanket and I just talked for half an hour.
So you'd like you said that you're just transitioning from pro player to content creator. Is it just kind of you've now had the opportunity and the time to talk about this? Or would you have talked about it earlier? It was like, is this a recent problem? The problem's gotten worse. Kind of like, what prompted you to actually make this video now? Is it just that you've become a content creator, or is it that the problem has become a lot worse recently?
I mentioned at the end of my video that I'm not entirely sure if the problem has been there since release or not. I think that gets covered up by the newness factor of when you start playing a game for the first time, everything is awesome.
Yeah, it really is.
Then you combine that with the fact that I'm in pro play, and so we live in our own bubble where we don't really see the problems of solo queue. And then the moment you do play solo queue, right, it's like you're exiting the pro player bubble, going to solo queue, and you're like, you look at your teammate and you go, wow, this kind of sucks, right? You're like, yeah, whatever, 8 hours of scrims, fuck it, you know? And then, yeah, I don't know if it's been there since release or not. Some of those problems have been, like the ultimates definitely have been there since release, and I think that did get covered up a lot by the fact that of the newness factor of the game to me. And then the other aspect of it I didn't talk about was I think another issue of the game I have that makes people feel very powerless is spawn advantages at the end of checkpoints and 2CP maps that has been there since release, but everyone's kind of tolerated. That's another issue that you know that you have to win a fight decisively in order to take the point because you have to kill 10 plus people, right? And so, yeah, it kind of adds to the whole, I don't know if any of these problems are fixable. We're just playing a really super team-based game in a solo queue environment, and then a lot of the nature of these issues are because of that. And then the other part of it too is, I still remember at the very start of Overwatch, man, Blizzard literally talked about not implementing solo queue, and everyone raged and freaked out, right? Until they implemented solo queue. Yeah, because they originally said the game was meant to be played as a team, and there was going to be 6-man, only 6v6 ranked full premates, and that was it.
I actually didn't know that. That's amazing.
That was back in early beta. And then it happened because everyone raged at the time, I believe, so that we finally got solo queue. And now we get to see all the issues with the game in a solo queue environment. I kind of wonder if Blizzard had it right from the very beginning and they saw all these issues coming from a mile away, but they obviously couldn't have a game without solo.
And now we have no 6v6 mode, no team mode at all in client. Like the first kind of step to the path to pro is legitimately just like straight up joining the open division and throwing yourselves to the sharks. But yeah,
more pugs, yeah.
I love pugs. I love pugs so much. But and when I was watching your video myself, a lot of these things were like, I can see what you're saying, but in a team environment, these issues really wouldn't exist. In teams, it's kind of, you can counter these things, you can keep track of these things. There's the problems that you're stating, although they might be not as fun to deal with at the pro level, there are solutions available to them. So just confirming what I already kind of heard from your video, but your video is very much laser focused into like the solo queue experience at ranked, not at kind of pro play or team play, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pro play is its own special thing where there's so much more depth. You get to work around everything. You do this and that. And solo queue, it's just a completely different game. So because it is that different game, you deal with more frustrations and like problems with the game.
Now, you're obviously top 500 player. And a lot of people are kind of relating this to the lower ranks, gold and platinum ranked. Is this a problem at all elos? Is it a problem for most people? If it is that problem, is it kind of just like threatening the longevity of the game? Or is it like, so let's just rephrase that question. Is this a problem for everyone? Or is it a problem for like only the low ranks or only the high ranks in solo
I think
queue?
a lot of the issues I talk about are for everyone. But here's the interesting aspect, right? You hear so many people talk about role queue, right? And I guarantee you've probably heard a lot of people talk about role queue in videos or just everywhere. And so that's a problem. Like for me at top 500, almost every single game is 2 healers, 2 supports, 2 EPS, or like it's very, very rare. I'd say like 1 in 10 or even less games that I don't even have 2 tanks or 2 healers. Right. And so there are problems that the lower ranks have where people in the general player base ask for role queue and they ask for these other aspects of the game to be fixed that I don't see. And there's aspects of the game that I have a problem with because I'm close to the pro meta, right? Like is goats /3-3 really a problem in platinum? Probably not.
I don't know. My chat is just about to explode with yeses, I assure you.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
Surefour wants in on this call. Do you mind?
Am I getting zerged by Canadians?
Apparently, yeah. We'll just get all of the Canadians to come and just bum rush you. You okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just add me as a friend on Discord here?
Oh yeah.
Do. And then get Surefour in here. Create group DM. Hello.
Glubs glub.
How you doing?
I'm good.
What's
I
up,
woke
dude?
up like an hour or two ago.
Did you watch Seagull's video already?
Yeah, watched all of it.
What are your thoughts, Lane?
I'm the type of person that I like when there are like solutions to problems people represent. And before I made my post on Twitter, I didn't know you made that intentional, but I still like when there's actually a solution or at least like something they can work off of, because like anyone can criticize someone. Anyone can be like, hey, like say you're walking down the street and like I'll try to avoid swearing, but like you're walking down the street and you see someone with like clothing on and you don't like their style and you're like, hey, your clothing looks bad. And then you kind of just leave it with that. Like, sure, that's like that's the type of criticism. Like, yeah, your clothing's bad. And they're like, well, why is my clothing bad?
Yeah.
So I like you could say I don't like your clothing. I think it's bad because like the colors aren't that good. Like the colors don't work together in a way. Like that's not a clear solution, but that is like something they can work off of.
So that is one thing that's kind of missing from the end of your video, is I was expecting you to propose some actual solutions to the to the problems that you presented themselves, but we kind of just leave it open for discussion. So were there any, you mentioned roll queue previously, Surefour, feel free to chime in as well, but
See,
go ahead.
I've talked to the devs a little bit about roll queue and why why it's very hard to implement into Overwatch. And the only reason it's weird is because everyone thinks of it as like 3 roles, right? Like tank, DPS, and support. But unfortunately, in Overwatch, there's actually 6 roles, which is what it is in like pro play. And the only reason to get it like actually like working in Overwatch is if you have those 6 roles, which is main DPS, flex DPS, main support, flex support, off tank, and main tank. So
Yeah,
if you
go ahead.
yeah, if you only introduce 3 roles, DPS, main tank, and support, you kind of get the gist of it. But like, what happens when you get like 2 Rhine players on your team? You kind of have the same problem as you did before, as like even if you just had like random players playing it. Because to be really good in Overwatch, a lot of people specialize in things, but you're gonna still have the same problem. So the only way to inherently fix that is if you add those 6 roles. But then the only worry is, what if the queue times just become ludicrous because of it?
Thoughts, Seagull?
Let me go one step at a time. So the solution part, the reason I don't talk about solutions is because I'm not a game designer, and every dev that I've ever talked to at any company, including Blizzard and the Overwatch team, I think even Jeff posted this directly on the forums, is they really appreciate feedback from the community and players that's structured like, this makes me feel this way, or this makes me feel like this. And the reason for that is because they're the ones who know the intention behind everything. And so it's more constructive feedback to them than trying to say, this sucks, implement this. And maybe they have a lot of reasons behind the scenes of why they can and cannot implement that. But if you talk to them about the feeling, they can address the negative feelings and experiences with the game in another fashion.
So your approach to this is kind of like, this is what, from my experience, I don't like. This is why I don't like it. The solutions are up to you. You're the professional, and the intent behind the original design. So it's up to you to come up with the solution. You being the devs.
Yeah, yes. I'm not a developer. I'm a pro player, and so my bubble, like of what I'm competent at, is looking at the game, complaining about it, and criticizing about it. But I'm not a designer, and so I don't have the ability to have good ideas, in my opinion, most of the time. Like, I can come up with maybe a good idea, but I don't think I'm good at it. So that's the first aspect
Perfect.
I want to talk about. The second one that you want to talk about was roll queue. And to me, I personally don't think roll queue is needed because within my SR level of GM plus, it is extremely rare not to have a generally structured team of 2-2-2, or at least 2 tanks, or at least 2 healers, stuff like that. But maybe for the lower level scene, maybe they do have that problem. But I wouldn't know because I don't have the experience on the low level SR, right? And then the other issue is, I think a lot of roll queue can just be done behind the scenes, where a big issue that I personally see is not necessarily that there isn't enough, but one role has too many people. Like, you have 3 Rhine players, or you have 3 supports, Or back in the days, you had 4 Mercy 1 tricks on your team. You're sitting there going, wow, this is fun. And so I think a lot of that should be done behind the scenes in the matchmaking algorithm where they go, okay, we're just going to guarantee, maybe not guarantee, obviously, but they can figure out who usually likes to play tanks, healers, and supports or DPS and kind of go from there and make sure there's at least one. And I probably would assume that they already do that behind the scenes to some extent. And then it avoids a lot of the issues that we're talking about with those roles where it's, there's actually a lot of roles in Overwatch. There's a crap ton. And to sit there and be like, okay, we're just going to have like this flex role. And like, I guess you guys are the tanks and I guess you guys are the healers. And then everyone else is just this generic flex, or there's all these issues with it that they can just avoid by kind of handling it behind the scenes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we actually, in the discussion just privately with my stream, privately, but on my stream, we said the same thing, that role queue would be extremely hard to implement, but like an intelligent matchmaker where it just checks to make sure, you don't have like 4, Ana 1 tricks or something on your team. Just kind of like a sanity check. Would this team function if people want to play, their top 2 most played heroes, or is there too much overlap? But Surefour, you're kind of a guy who likes to propose solutions or at least comment directly on balance. Did you have any kind of other suggestions or solutions to the problem with ranked being complete shit other than role queue?
Well, one of the problems that solo queue is always hard is it's usually not even a problem of like game balance or like what heroes are like introduced to the game. A lot of like the feeling of hopelessness people have, especially in a very team-based game, is because it is team-based and your performance completely relies on other people's performance. So like if anyone's played any MOBA like League of Legends or Dota 2, you can get these exact same feelings because you can do the best you can and still lose because it's the other people on your team that you need to do something to help you. And one of the ways to avoid that kind of feeling is like some people get this feeling because they do really well and they think that win is deserved. And when they think it's deserved, that's when that kind of feeling of like frustration comes in, because that's when they start like being like, I should have won this game because I performed very well, but I didn't because of these guys over here. I think that's the main problem with solo queue and team-based games, and that's the frustration people have. It's not always because of what the heroes in the game are.
Is that fixable?
That kind of feeling is mostly a mindset thing for the most time. That you need to like think like, am I doing everything I need to do? Yes. Can I control these other people? There are ways to control it, like, hey, our comp is shit. Hey guys, I think we should switch to this comp. Like, say they go goats, and now you're frustrated they're goats, but you don't say anything like, hey guys, we should switch goats back. Then like you're getting frustrated for no reason because you're not like actually doing anything to like cause a fix to it. So you can either say like swaps that might help you win. So like they go goats and you're like, hey guys, we should go goats too. But if you never say it, you're just gonna get frustrated yourself. But then it's like, if your problem itself is I don't like playing goats as a meta, then that's a different problem.
Seagull?
What I was going to say is the whole aspect that you're talking about where you're trying to assist your team and micro your team constantly, from a streamer perspective, doing that for 6 to 8+ hours a day is nearly impossible, because when you put that much emotional investment on every game, by the 5th game of people not doing it and your average day, you're just like, man, I'm just not even going to bother. This is fucked.
Yeah.
Right. Because you get tilted. And that's like, I think that's a normal human response. And then I don't know. I kind of forgot where I was going with the rest of
Okay, so I gotta wait for us to move on here. If we're looking at kind of ranked as a problem, Seagull, you don't want to kind of propose any explicit solutions because you're not a developer. Surefour had his own suggestions. Would you rather the devs kind of focus on trying to fix solo queue through kind of little adjustments, or is it time that we add in alternatives to solo queue, like a 6v6 ladder, 6v6 tournaments like they have in League, in-client, team-based competitive modes that are kind of more similar to what happens in like pro play and contenders level? So would you rather, if you had the option between fixing ranked and introducing something better than ranked, what would you prefer?
Well, I kind of want to ask Seagull a question real quick.
Go ahead.
Do you think the problem with ranked is because of how the game is designed itself, or because of the players themselves?
why would it? In my opinion, players are not to blame for being toxic. I think the game design naturally makes people toxic towards each other because I don't think inherently dicks play.
Well, I wasn't talking about whether people are toxic or
Yeah,
not.
if I can take a different perspective on this, I think that good game design takes into account the psychology of players. Kind of like from my background in aviation as well, planes are designed to fly despite the best efforts of the pilot. Is what we kind of refer to it as. Is that the only way that a plane should crash is if a pilot makes a mistake. In the same way that the game design should account for player psychology and work towards a beneficial solution, unless people are just inherently trying to be malicious.
So I got lost. Are you trying to say like the structure influences behavior? Is that basically?
Yeah, that's so. Surefour is asking whether or not it's the fault of the game or the fault of the players, and my statement is basically that the game should take into account the psychology and kind of the emotions of the player.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think the community can do stuff about it. And I think the best way to do that is to either, okay, let's say you're in top 500. I wish we could just all have 6 stacks
Yes,
playing
all
against
day.
each other. That's the easy way to do it. There's custom pugs that people can set up. There's a lot of different avenues to make good content that sidesteps the issue that we're talking about, but that doesn't solve it for the rest of the game. Well, maybe you could somehow do it if you can make pug systems that popular for the rest of the game. But even then,
Working on it.
yeah, but even then, that's its own separate issue, right? Because now you're evolving the game from the in-game matchmaking to third-party services, and I'm not sure what Blizzard would think about that in the long term because they would want to just fix the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, seems like we're agreeing on that point. What are the kind of... So, as a community, so as the people who are going to be listening to this either live, when it hits YouTube, when it's discussed on Twitter, what as a community is the best thing that we can do to help Blizzard find a solution?
I mean, the only way to like have a concrete solution is like you have 6 people playing competitively together with 6 people, but that's just how like Overwatch is as a game. It's like team based. But like in a MOBA, if you play solo queue, you're gonna have the same problems because sometimes you don't think the same as your other teammates, and that leads to uncoordination, which can lead to losses. And the same problem comes to Overwatch. I don't think like most of like the heroes or the designs of how the game is played right now is because of like I don't think Brig is inherently bad for the game. But a lot of people's gripes with Brig right now is she's very easy to use. But at the same time, you need easy characters or heroes in the game for a lot of the community. I mean, it's one of the reasons like Fortnite is so popular right now because like it's very accessible. Because like a lot of people are like, oh, I hate hard counters and stuff, or like we need less counters. But like, what's the only way to counter a tracer? Like, how do you create a hero that counters tracer without being in a hard counter? The only way you can counter it is with skill, but not everyone has skill.
I mean, to me, at the end of the day, Brigida's healthy for the game, so we aren't playing dive all the time. Like from a strategic meta POV, it's good.
Mhm.
I just wish the counter wasn't so unfun to play against for the general population.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I'm absolutely agreeing with
Everyone probably agrees with that. It's just like it's very hard to counter someone that is uncounterable without being at a hard counter.
that. The
It's called
last
nerf the shit out of Trace. Delete her from the fucking game.
So now you introduce a different thing where you just hate the fuck out of Tracer.
Your
Hey,
your
day
tracist
one,
history
buddy.
is showing up. Your
Day
tracist
one.
history is showing up.
I
You've always
saw
been a
it coming.
tracist. You've always been a
Day one.
tracist.
Day one, bro. I was blaming Tracer for everything, and she enabled the dive meta for years. Was I?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
But now you have something that counters her. But it just see this is what I have with like other things. Like, have you played a lot of MOBAs before, Seagull?
A decent amount, but would it go ahead?
Well, it's just like a lot of people think of or want Overwatch to be like a traditional FPS game like Quake or like TF2 and stuff or like CS:GO, but It's just not because there's abilities. So it's like a combination of that, but it's more so a MOBA on my side because like most things are based on abilities, and there's only a few heroes that are only about aim, which is mostly like the hit scan heroes.
That is one of the
And,
things that makes the game more accessible than a traditional FPS.
And the other thing is, in MOBAs, every little hero addition or every little hero change completely changes the meta. Like, there can be one hero that gets introduced to the game, and now all of a sudden one hero can't be played at all anymore, even though they were like a mainstay originally.
I mean, it gets difficult talking about balance issues in MOBAs because players can balance the game themselves via the pick ban system. So if something is horribly overpowered, they just remove it. And so the developers of MOBA games can be a lot more free to go hard on balancing and do crazy stuff because they know even if they completely mess up the game, that hero will just get chain banned and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But
And that's one of the reasons why I recommended early on, even before Brig was added, that I think we should have a ban system, at least one ban per team nowadays in Overwatch. I think there's enough heroes to do that now. Say Tracer was this insane problem, you just ban Tracer until like they change her or something. Or like, say you hate Mercy, you ban Mercy.
Yeah, this was actually something that was brought up and being talked a lot about backstage at the World Cup, is that I think Jake was the first one who brought it up in discussion.
it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
People have
And
been
your
talking
opinion
about it
on
in
like the
person.
potential pick ban phase in Overwatch? Seagull?
I mean,
I would think
if
there's
you
no
had
pick
enough
system.
heroes, yeah, the pick system gets weird to talk about because the moment you start talking about picks, then you can't flex, right? And you lose a lot of the nuance where like you want to play. It moves the strategy of the game to we can pick and choose the best heroes to play at every point in the map to which point do we want to focus on the most with our team composition, right? Let's say you're playing Ike, for example. If you play like a Ryan Zarya comp on defense and you pick that and you commit to it, then obviously you have to play it pretty weird on second point with rotations, but it means you're going to be more of a third point defense team than a second point, right? And if a team picks Winston Diva, they're more of a first, second type of team than a third point team, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't like getting into the whole pick system. Bans are interesting, but I don't know if there's enough heroes in the game for it because if you just look at how many healers and tanks you have, a lot of the time, I mean, tanks are becoming a little bit better because now you have Hammond. So you have Orisa and Ryan for your general shield tanks, and then you have Hammond, Winston, Diva for the mobility tanks. But healers, there's still not that many.
I think there's enough healers. I mean, say you ban Ana, you still have Mercy Lucio. You still have Zen Lucio. Say you ban Zen, you still have Mercy Lucio. You still have Ana Lucio. Like, you still have enough for having an offensive ultimate / utility ultimate and a defensive ultimate.
It's just it gets difficult because I'll mention the other thing really quick that I wanted to talk about picks I forgot was a lot of the heroes in Overwatch are specialists that you only use for certain situations. Those would just almost never get picked.
Yeah.
And it reduces those, it kind of pushes those heroes out of the game a bit more. But of course, Blizzard is already pushing those specialists out of the game themselves, right? Because they're trying to make these heroes more generally viable. Like now they were trying to push that Torb to be more of a generalist hero. Symmetra's a hell of a lot more generally viable than she used to be. And so that's the pick thing. But for bans, there could be enough heroes. I don't know. Like, how many bans would you want to see?
Probably
Just
like
one
the one
per
that was
team.
being discussed was one per team.
At the moment, because
Yeah.
there's not enough heroes.
So, then there's the same argument, like, even if it was one ban per team, what happens if the two bans are Brigitte and Diva? Or what if the two bans are Lucio and Zenyatta? Like, what does the game even look
the game's
like?
good again.
Ban
certainly
Brigitte and
be
Diva in the
interesting.
game. Overwatch,
Ban-
now
ban
playable.
Ban Brig and Diva, and now Hitscan can actually play the game.
Coming, signed Hitscan gang, right?
I'm everything, gang. Okay.
Oh,
Don't get me
okay.
started on that.
Okay. Seagull, one ban per team. Thoughts?
I just don't know if there's enough heroes in the game for it. And I don't know. I don't even know what that would look like. I would love to do a pug system with it and just see how crazy the game would get because it'd be fun. One of these.
We're running pugs. That's like the main focus of my stream next week. We have a new pug server. If you want to, I'm going to take you up on that offer if you're interested. Play pugs next week.
Do one ban per team. If you're curious about it, you can actually, if you have a custom pug setup and you have GM plus players doing it,
We do.
then you can do weird stuff like that and just try it and see what happens.
Yeah, we actually tried this. So we have semi-pro pugs set up for North America. We're implementing them for Europe next week. But on Sunday, we actually did the first experimentation with one ban per team. It was funny. One game actually ended up having Soldier and Mercy banned. It was like targeted one-trick bans. But then the other game, the game does get completely out of control, or at least from the few games that we saw where Diva was banned as a pick. The game was, I guess nobody really knew how to play in a world without Diva. But, you know, people, any change of drastic like that, which would completely not only change the meta, but the play style and the strategic way of looking at the game, you know, you'd have to not only know metas for the current state of Overwatch, but you'd have to know what's strong when you remove one hero or when these two combinations here. So like the required depth of knowledge in order to play Overwatch at the highest level in terms of a one ban per team system would be incredibly challenging.
I mean, it'd be interesting at least. It'd be really weird.
I think we should experiment with it. I think it'd be a fun thing to try. More experimentation needed. Well, did anybody else, or should I bring up stats, or did anybody have more comments on like bans and potential
I was
balancing?
going to ask a question.
Go ahead, Surefour.
So is your one of your gripes with like hard counters and stuff is because the hard counters are like low skill?
I think it removes a lot of the depth to the game because you just know that no matter what you do, you just have to swap instead of being able to play against.
Yeah, I'm with Seagull on that one. I like the skill-based matchup. You know, you used the Widowmaker and the Pharah example. I love that example because, you know, on paper, Widowmaker hard counters Pharah, assuming there's like no map geometry and no other teammates around. But there are ways that Pharah can play in order to have the advantage or beat the Widow in that more or less 1v1 matchup during a 6v6 game. But if you have, even in that 6v6 matchup, so even when you introduce the factors of smart play, even when you introduce the factors of map geometry or teammates or play style, none of that matters in trying to allow Tracer to perform against a Brigitte, and the only solution does become swapping. And when we get to like the higher level, like the pro meta right now, being that kind of goats trumps Brig McCree, which trumps dive, which trumps goats, you know, that requires a lot of coordination that doesn't just do a rock, paper, scissors at the individual hero level, but at the compositional level, and ranked will never, ever come close to touching that level of coordination so long as there's solo queue.
So one of the solutions would be you want heroes that are introduced to be more skill-based rather than easily accessible.
That's how I interpreted it, is that you wanted more skill-based matchups, not kind of rock, paper, scissors matchups. Is that correct, Seagull?
Yeah, and I think Blizzard already sees that because I think they talked about that with, I think it was Jeff doing an interview with Emong at BlizzCon.
Mm-hmm.
I think they already talked about how they were they knew that a lot of the heroes they implemented, they got a little bit too crazy with them and they wanted to tone it down a little bit. And I'm pretty confident they know that was already an issue. And that's why when they released Ashe, like they're going back to that type of game and the type of heroes that they want to move, because they probably know that they moved too far away from those like FPS based heroes. And now we have too many ability based heroes, which are meta.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're just trying to move back those FPS characters. They're just adding more to the game. They'll probably become more part of the meta, you know, stuff like that. Of course, that's a different story of whether or not Ashe is fun to play against, because I personally think snipers are always unfun to play against. And I know she's not really a hardcore sniper, but we'll see.
Well, snipers are always unfun to play against because they instill hopelessness into the person that's getting shot in the head, and that's why I like playing snipers.
I'm just thinking of okay, I'm a ladder POV type of player these days, right? There's just going to be that duo queue of, I don't even know, Surefour plus Unco or something, and then Unco's just going to go pocket Surefour as a Mercy amp and just one tap everyone. And I'm sitting there like, okay.
I mean, one of the problems is like I feel like the easiest role to be able to add those high-skilled heroes to is, of course, DPS. Because, you know, that's DPS aim and DPS kill people. But, like, how do you make a tank hero that's skill-based in a way?
Hammond is a good example. I think most of a a lot of the tank skill isn't specifically in
Mechanical skill. It's
the FP.
Mhm.
It's not the FPS mechanics, because it's not like any of the tanks. Like Hammond takes a crap ton of mechanical skill. He's one of the like few exceptions, I think. And Ryan does, but that's all about mind games, right? Because otherwise he's just right clicking.
Yeah.
And so they require the different kind of skill. Like they're already super skill based. I think you actually see the most skill differentiation on tanks for the most part in Overwatch, because they set up the rest of the team. It's like DPS can't really do anything unless your tanks do something the vast majority of the time.
Tanks are
And
the most important role.
And if your tanks are doing well,
You're doing well.
A lot of the time. And the differentiation that I see in skill between tanks is massive. Like I can't tell the difference most of the time between the best DPS in Overwatch League, because a lot of the time I'm sitting there and I'm watching them. It's like, yeah, I know they're both really freaking good. They're both going to pop off, but the opportunities they're given to pop off are given to them by their tanks and their supports 90% of the time. And they're just the backbone of the team, and DPS are plug and play. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like I do the same thing where like you're watching a DPS and it's like the only thing you can actually like see is like their aim, but like being able to see their decision making based on how everyone else is playing is very hard, because you can't see everything else that is happening unless you're like actually like asking them, why are you doing this at this moment? Whereas tanks, it's very obvious, because like, hey, they jumped here, they did this to cause this.
their decision making is a lot more visual.
It's visual and like easily to articulate, because it's mostly their abilities that they use. And I feel like Brig can be changed and still can be like add a skill. Like one of my changes I want on Brig is to have like a 0.4 or 0.3 second bash, like a startup time, like it revs up.
That makes her useless for Tracer, though. The whole point of it being instant is so she can counter Tracer.
I don't think it makes it useless for Tracer. Like right now, even like when Tracers go against Brig, most Tracers don't get hit by shield bash unless like she's hiding around a corner and then just instantly bashes her.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Brig works against Tracer because she's a deterrent. It's like the same way like McCree somehow like somewhat counters Tracer, like with a flashbang. You get hit by a flashbang, you're dead. But there's a travel time to the flashbang. So like a McCree, like one-on-one, will like most of the time not kill a Tracer unless it's just pure left clicks. Brig versus Tracer one-on-one is just like a standstill. Like she has a shield, she has a bunch of stuff that like stops him, but like so most of the time Brig will not kill Tracer. It's just that the threat of the shield bash and the threat of a flashbang makes it so Tracer can't do whatever she wants. And the reason I want like a 0.3 second, so it's still fast, but you can still kind of counterplay it. So like I think one of the problems right now, even before they add the shield thing, is Brig, when Brig's going up to a Rhine, she has her shield. There's no way of telling when she's actually going to stun. It's literally just like, oh, she could stun, she could stun, bam, stun. So, but if there's like a 0.3 second cooldown where like her back like jets start revving up, and you're like, oh, the stun's coming. As Zarya,
Yeah,
you
like
could,
a charge animation.
Yeah, as Zarya, you could now tell when she's gonna like bash, and then you could bubble it and then block the bash shatter. But right now it's like, oh, Brig's right in my face, and I'm Zarya. I'm like, I used bubble at the wrong time.
So
okay, they waited out bash
you
shatter.
want the delay added to Brigitte so that there's more counterplay.
Yeah, there's like things to think about, because right now it's instantaneous. Like what if McCree's flashbang was like just like instant? Like a McCree gets close, it's just like now you're stunned, now you're dead. But right now a Tracer can blink in and then blink out to bait it, or like a Brig is like revving up.
What do you think,
he
Chad?
can like blink away from it. But that's why I want it like a 0.3 seconds. So it's still quick. So you have to have like really good reaction time to dodge it, but it is still enough to have a reaction time to play against it. And I feel that that's one of the things that can make Brig still accessible, but to have like skill to it.
So I actually just got a donation, which is pretty interesting. He says, a mechanic that Battle Right uses a lot around these types of abilities with windups is that you have the ability to cancel the windup and have a much shorter cooldown. So let's say you do this sort of windup and you can sort of mind game the Tracer into blinking, then you can cancel it, and maybe it's only like a 3 or 4 second cooldown instead of the second.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
That's what I liked about Battle Right. Battle Right is very skill based. But I think the problem isn't how the characters are designed per se. It's just you need things that involve counterplay to them.
So
And, like,
more kind of wind-ups or signaling that you're going to do something, the ability to
Yeah.
cancel it for a reduced penalty.
hmm
So there's kind of, you're introducing counterplay, and then there's a counter to that counterplay.
Yep. But it doesn't make the character inherently useless. It still makes her strengths strong.
I'd buy that for
mean,
$1.
Fundamentally, the big issue that you're talking about is like, okay, we're talking about goats mirrors. There's Brigida's about to stun your Ryan, and they're almost perpetually always in stun range. At any point, they can just click and stun them. But if they get stunned and you bubble after, your whole team's still going to get shattered. But but the Ryan won't. It's like, okay, cool. I guess he can shield afterwards or something. But you just want to have that opportunity to be like, I know they're going to stun, and I can bubble it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I like that too. But I just
She
get
still
so worried
counters.
about Tracer.
Well, she still counters Tracer because of all of her AoE healing, her armor, and the deterrence of the stun. Like McCree's my
the
biggest
stun would
example
be
of it.
easier for Tracer to dodge, but it would still be a threat in the same way that Flashbang and Roadhog Hook are. And
Yeah,
that would also
because, like-
kind of make it more of a skill-based matchup like you wanted, Seagull, in the fact that if a Tracer can kind of dodge or bait out that stun, then they can go in
Well,
a lot harder.
It's already like when I talk about my video, like good Tracers don't even get hit by Brigida unless the Brigida's third personing or the Tracer messes up, because that's just how it is right now.
Yep.
So wind up or not, that's just kind of how it is already played. And I'd just be worried about the deterrent factor with a wind up Brigida versus Tracer. Could she just be a lot more cocky about it? I don't
Well,
Well,
Nerf
she can
Tracer.
be cocky, sure, but like then that's why you have a team with you. I mean, like that's why it's like you can't think of things as like 1v1 scenarios. Like 1v1, Tracer's gonna win every single matchup in the entire game because Tracer just has so much to her kit. But because Brig adds this deterrence, she can stay near her supports and not make it so she can just go in and do whatever she wants. It's the same reason like when you have a McCree near your supports.
until the McCree gets one clip.
I mean, that's. I mean, technically, a Brig can get one clipped if she's not paying attention, and the Tracer's really good. But
Sure.
you know, that's just how Overwatch is.
Shall we move on to talking about ults or stats?
You do you, host Jayne.
Okay, I'm just going to
Jane's
pretend
the
to.
host
I'm
now.
just going to pretend to be the moderator here. So there's two topics from your video that we haven't covered yet: the statement that you felt ultimates were too impactful, and statistics. So let's do ultimates first. This isn't the first time the discussion has come up. Like previously, I don't remember what the original nerf to ultimate charge was, but ultimates used to come on a lot, come online a lot more. So Seagull, just to clarify your position, do you think that there are too many ultimates? Like somebody gave me a stat here earlier, and they said that in the Overwatch League, the amount of ultimates used is 25 per 10 minutes. So 2.5 ultimates per minute, basically. So was your argument in the video that there are too many ultimates and that the charge rate is too quickly, or that the ultimates themselves are too impactful?
Even if you change the charge rate, it doesn't change the fact. The feeling I want to address is helplessness and frustration that the other team has more ults than you do, and you feel like you're at such a severe disadvantage going into the team fight that it's almost already lost. And no, this is specifically for a solo queue environment where most of your team is going to be autopiloting unless you're specifically microing all of them, even at a top 500 level, right? Because pros have plans for that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And all the other stuff, but solo queue doesn't. And so this, for my video, what I'm talking about specifically is those solo queue aspects. And so for me personally, I think ults themselves are too powerful. And when you start tweaking with charge times, you start implementing problems for the lower tier players who just suck at the game and can't build their ults.
So is this kind of similar to the conversation where you want skill-based matchups rather than hard counter matchups? Is that you want ultimates to be less powerful so that there's more counter plays that don't actually involve ultimates themselves?
Yes, that is the easiest way to put it.
Okay, Surefour, thoughts?
I mean, I've always thought ultimates are too much. I've even suggested that you're only allowed to use one ultimate per game, but even buff everyone's ultimate because of it.
One ultimate per game.
Yep.
That's a little over the top. I just okay. We all thought I don't know. I've talked about this with many pro players who have started playing this game. Right? Did anyone ever expect when you started playing Overwatch for the first time? Right? It's called an ultimate that you just have it every minute and a half or every minute. It feels so weird, and no one ever really. That's just speaking strictly to charge rates, but that's the first. I don't know of anyone who expected that when they first started playing the game.
I don't know. This is kind of. I played the competitive experience for me previously was MMOs that didn't have ultimates, so I have no frame of reference to know whether that's large or small amounts of time.
I mean, if you really want, you can just do what MOBAs do and put it on a timer.
Just a straight up timer, no charge rate change depending on performance.
Yep.
Well, that becomes its own problem because that's a huge mechanic in the game that they wanted is ults to be the charge rate is skill based and you do damage, and like once it becomes only timers, it's not as fun I think for a lot of people.
And
but
it's a lot
removes
more predictable because I think also in MOBAs you can't see when they have their ultimates. You can see when they have like flash and shit.
I mean, the thing is, like, you say ultimates are really bad, and you like the fact there's like a charge up based on how much performance you're doing.
Yeah.
But that inherently promotes snowballing because if you win first fight immediately, you can cycle ults, and no matter what the other team does or how they perform, they're gonna get cycled. But if you add a timer to ultimates, then everyone will get ults at the same time, and the more skill-based team that uses their ults correctly will win. So, but even if you don't use your ults, you will still have it after because theirs is going to be on cooldown, and they won't get to snowball after.
So, the very first fight, or within the first 2 minutes, you would have perfect knowledge of the exact second that everybody's getting their ultimate.
Yep. And right now, the problem is like with high-level gameplay with supports, is you have to like accurately determine how much damage your team took for the other person, and can kind of guess how much ults they have.
So it changes tracking from right now, kind of like a half science, half art between knowing the charge rates and knowing how much damage they did, into kind of just memorizing the exact seconds that these abilities were used and knowing when they're going to be back off cooldown. So, interesting.
And the only way to really stop performance-based alt charge snowballing is if you just make alt charge take way longer to get. But then that still doesn't fix the problem because any team that's doing better will still get more ults faster than the other person.
Yeah, you could have it where you that timer doesn't tick while you're dead, or do a whole bunch of different things. What are your thoughts on these ideas? We could also test these in a pug, actually, couldn't we? Because you can change ult charge rate.
Except the like timer-based system.
You could just have timer based off passive charge and hit active charge to 0 in a custom. You could set that up that way.
Nice.
So you could you could implement these changes in a custom game to see if they would work. But Seagull, Surefour and I have been chatting. What are you thinking?
I don't know. It gets hard to talk about because I do enjoy that feeling of if you're good at the game, you get more ults. But I'm not a fan of that ult being so powerful that it reduces the depth and nuance in the game. And so I enjoy that feeling. And to me, that's sort of one of the core mechanics of Overwatch they designed from the very beginning. And once you start tweaking that sort of thing, it messes with a lot of stuff in the game. So,
yeah, it wouldn't make the game necessarily worse or better. It just makes the game different, massively different from how it's played right now.
Well, that's what I mean by I like talking about like solutions in a way, because like you don't have to have like 100% like I want it to be this way. That's why like it's not like I want ultimates to be on a timer-based system. I'm like, that's another thought. That's like something they could work off. That's like a different perspective on what it could be. But right now you don't like ultimates, or you don't like how powerful they are. So do you want like ultimates to be toned down? Do you want ultimates to be gained slower?
I don't know. I think ults should be toned down. That's just my general opinion because I think they're too powerful. I don't know what to do outside of that.
Yeah. So I'm not saying like when I say solution, it's not like a concrete thing you need. Like even you just saying, I think ults are too powerful. I want them to be toned down more. That's a quote unquote solution. Solution is toning them down.
Yeah, and a better player, better player will not only have their ultimates more often, but will get more value out of their ultimates. So one of the problems that you were talking about, especially on Koth or control maps, was that snowballing. Better players will still have that same advantage from being more skillful with it, but will not have the more like the additional advantage of getting that ultimate, in which is going to get more value more often. So it also kind of ties in two of your points together. So I can see the logic behind this. Everyone's thinking really hard. I think Chad.
I don't
is
have
too.
that much to talk about it because I don't really know what to bring up about it. Like, I don't like messing or tweaking massive base mechanics of the game like that, because to me that is also kind of what Overwatch is. And then I want ults to be nerfed across the board because they're too powerful and they reduce the amount of depth and strategy of the game. I've stuck to that same stance this whole time, and that's just how I feel.
You don't like proposing solutions. I like trying to test as many different solutions as possible. Different ways of approaching the same problem. But the last topic that we had to talk about was statistics and the kind of inherent lack thereof. You know, I actually tried to teach myself Dota after watching Surefour play it. By the way, I suck. But one of the things that amazed me about Dota was just the sheer quantity of post-game statistics that it gave you, like just from like tutorial games and things, and where you don't even get a post-stats screen. We don't even have a match history in Overwatch. Of course, these are like massive quality of life improvements, but kind of for what other reasons did you want stats added into the game, Seagull?
I want all the stats the casters have access to. We all know they have access a lot of in-depth statistics behind the scenes in Overwatch League. I want that in the game. I want to see that. I actually think not having those statistics makes the game more toxic more often than not, because people don't know what the problems are. They can't solve them. People are blind. They blame each other for stuff they don't know anything about. And then on top of that, I like being able to see that data. And when I first started playing this game, and I don't know if this was true for other people, I found it very hard to figure out if I was performing well or not because I had no stats available to me. And so, what they could do is there's different levels of stats where it's like, maybe you want certain stats available during the game, and maybe you only want some stats available after the game. And I think some games do it that way. I think League of Legends has certain stats that are only available post-game. I don't remember. But right now it's just like, oh, I have golds, I do well, forehead, and that's kind of it.
Every losing team has someone with gold medals.
I don't even think stats are important in Overwatch. To be
You
honest.
don't think stats are important in Overwatch?
No, I think there's way too many variables in Overwatch that actually like affect something being good or not. Like a damage stat, for example. Like, say there's a McCree that's shooting at a Rhine shield the whole time, stacking up damage, blah, bang, 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 bang. Then there's a McCree that's flanking and trying to pick off people.
That shows itself in final blows and flank and solo kills versus damage done. And you can even break down that damage into effective damage that's immediately healed versus damage that goes towards kills, stuff like that. Once you have enough stats, you can break down even the most crazy game.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. Like, for example, I think most of it is based on like what your reasons for doing something on a team are. And it was like one of the reasons I didn't want stats, or like I couldn't think of stats. Like, the best thing to do is for like a tank player. Like, say there's a Winston that's constantly diving their backline and just ticking up damage, ticking up the limbs, maybe. And then there's a Winston that is more like peeling or like doing pressure jumps, like a Winston that's jumping in between their supports and just like denying space. The Winston that's denying space won't get a lot of damage in the limbs, but maybe by denying that space, the enemy's tanks are dying more because of it, but it's not directly reflected in his stats.
Wouldn't I be able to tell that based on how much damage taken the Winston has? Because the Winston that's more aggressive will take more damage and require more healing, and I will be able to see that based on those stats that one or the other requires more healing due to their.
I think if we look at this in a different way, I can kind of actually see where Surefour's coming here now. Like, if we're looking at the use case for Brigitte in GOATs just racks up statistics like crazy. But in the last season of Contenders, if you have Brigitte being played in the Brigitte on a dive defense combination, that Brigitte is going to be playing the way that needs to be played in order to win. But their statistics when compared to a Brigitte in Goats, or even a Brigitte who is trying to be a much more aggressive, might have higher stats, but would lose more fights and lose more games because they're not fulfilling that role of protecting their Ana. So I think what Surefour is trying to say is that there are playstyles out there that are good playstyles, will result in more victories than losses, but don't get reflected in stats.
The only stat I've really always wanted to see is percentage of healing received. So like, say there is a main tank that is getting a shit ton of healing and like getting most of the orb preference or most of the anti-heals, and then like that shows like this guy was taking 80% of the healing. I think percentage of like healing is a stat that's very important, because then you know who most of like the resources are being given to. I think like stats that go towards how people use their abilities towards certain teammates are good, because then you know where most of the like the influence is being given to. Like for example, if you have that stat for like New York Excelsior, for example, you know that Jonak is getting damage boosted and healed most of the time, and then for their tanks, you'd probably see their healing is not being like given to them that much. So you know, oh, Jonak needs to perform and is performing this well because he's getting this amount of resources.
So I agreed with you previously, but now counterpoint to your own point, Surefour. I'm just going to be an asshole and play devil advocate.
that's
Stats
fine.
aren't going to lie to you. They're only just they're going to tell you a story, and it might not be the full story. But if you have, footage of the game, or if you played in the game, you can probably say that, this person didn't have so many eliminations because their playstyles like this, or because they were doing these different things, or, they were getting healed more, or if you did have those more in detailed stats. I don't think that having stats won't tell you everything, but it's not going to lie to you as long as you interpret them correctly. I don't know.
And then the problem comes to whether the person interpreting the stats actually understands the stats or not, which I think most of the people in Overwatch do not have that level of thinking to be able to interpret them correctly.
Is that just because they don't have stats to ever look at, and so naturally they don't have the skill of looking at?
I think even if they had the stats, I don't think they could interpret it correctly.
Do you think that people would just kind of see the stats? They already have a conclusion. The conclusion in their head is that their Winston is throwing. They see that Winston doesn't have good stats in this regard because they were playing differently, and they're going to use that as an excuse or as evidence to be toxic and blame the Winston?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like in Overwatch having stats is the same thing as not having stats in terms of blaming people.
So you think there's no difference between blaming people about whether we had stats or didn't have stats?
Yeah, in my opinion, in Overwatch exclusively, yes.
Okay. So
I'm like the complete opposite, because from my experience of looking at stats and everything involved with players, the number one easiest stat to determine player performance right now, with the minimal stats available, unless you're an Overwatch League team looking at the stats back and stuff, it is usually just how often are you dying is the easiest predictor of player performance or what is going on within a team. Where it's like, okay, if my Ana or Mercy is hitting 10 plus deaths, that means our back line is getting shredded. We need to figure out why, and stuff like that. But we don't even have that in the basic scoreboard to just be like, my Ana's died like 15 times. I need to protect my Ana better. I need to go look at where this Doomfist is coming in or whatever. And from my experience, I just think, regardless of anything, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm scared to present information because there are people who are stupid and will look at them wrong, because I think that's just a weird way of looking at things. I don't like that.
yeah, it's like babying people almost. And,
Well, it's not that I think they're stupid. It's just I think Overwatch, even for like the highest players, is very hard to like articulate solutions without like looking at the VOD in third person in a way, because like as a DPS, I don't always know what's happening to the back line, or I don't always know what's happening in the front line.
And this problem is also much more broad than just kind of like ranked versus Overwatch League. But if you're looking at kind of like tier 2 and tier 3 teams, like actual academy teams don't even have access to these stats. And with tools like Visor and Pursuit and Overtrack and all of those being banned, unless you're doing kind of like manual stat recording yourself, then even kind of the teams that are trying to become pro don't have access to these sort of statistics. And for those people who do have the knowledge to make use of them, they're still completely inaccessible.
Yeah, it gets really awkward for people doing tryouts, especially because what are those people doing tryouts even get for Overwatch League teams or Academy teams? It's like, okay, you ask them to record a VOD and then you watch their VOD later, plus your own spectator VOD. You don't even have a replay to see the full picture a lot of the time. It just gets really awkward.
Yep.
So I'm not saying we shouldn't get stats, like all these open stats or whatever the Overwatch League happens. I'm just saying it won't fix the problem of people being toxic or not.
Well, I think even if toxicity is directed at a number which people are interpreting incorrectly, it's still typically going to be a problem of some kind. And at least then it's directed towards something that people can fix rather than it's just like, okay, our Ana's dying a lot, or hey, our Hanzo's doing no damage in the last 2 team fights. Why is this? You know, they can look at that and they can slowly figure it out. I have more faith in people to interpret stats correctly because I think the Overwatch community is older at this point, and I think if stats were available earlier on, there's obviously going to be a learning curve for the community to get used to stats and how to use them appropriately, especially in a solo queue environment. But I don't know, if people are toxic now, like what's the big deal? I don't know. Like people are dicks to each other naturally in a solo queue environment in the decent amount of my games. So what's the big deal in having stats? Like, is it really going to make it worse? I don't
think it'll make it worse.
I don't think it'll make it worse. I think there's
It'll
only
just make
benefits.
it the same.
I think there's only benefits.
Then at least I get to see what's really happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered every single point in the video, unless Surefour or Seagull, you want to bring up other topics to discuss regarding ranked, ways to improve
There was
the game
one
as a whole.
topic I didn't bring up in
Ooh.
that video.
Let's hear it.
Well, I didn't bring it up because it's another personal one, similar to I believe ults are too powerful. I believe there are too many scenarios in the game where one team has an overwhelming spawn advantage compared to the other team, and that's why ultimates need to be this powerful in the first place a lot of the time. So the most obvious ones are 2CP, right? Anubis, Volskaya, second point, all the second points in the game. And then also at the end of every second checkpoint on every single payload map, people get stalled. Second point Dorado, second point Gibraltar, second
Blizzard
point Rialto,
World.
second point Blizzard World. Every single one, without a doubt, almost every single end of checkpoint fight in Overwatch is extremely difficult to take over unless you have an overwhelming spawn advantage or ult advantage to break the enemy spawn advantage. That's how Overwatch works. So you have to win a fight decisively using ults, like I would say at least a decent amount of the time, because if you don't and the fight drags on, then you have to kill their team twice.
I feel like that's kind of
everyone
game
can
design.
agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's more of a game design
I
thing.
feel
or
like that's
map
game
design thing.
Sure, but I would argue that because of that, a lot of people, it's another feeling of powerlessness where if you aren't working together as a team to decisively win a team fight, and that spawn advantage takes away from a single person's ability to carry. I didn't put that in the video because it's more of a smaller point than the other ones, and I feel like people would get caught up in it. But since we're just kind of chatting casually about stuff, I figured I'd.
I mean, one of my solutions that I've thought of with the second point payload is on second point spawns, there is a defender's only access to like the third area. Whereas if they get stuck and spawn in there, they can just climb or like walk through that tunnel and just be safe without the offenders.
Yeah,
being able to go through there.
that's another part I didn't bring up. That's another smaller aspect. You're talking about like, first point Gibraltar, you cap and now you get another 5 free kills and you get to snowball harder because they're walking out of spawn one by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
So,
spawns
like,
are bullshit.
Say that second point Gibraltar, you spawn there, and then there's like a tunnel that only the defenders can go through to be able to go like up to second.
Yeah, or just a Symmetra TP that just spawns and goes to the next spawn.
Yeah.
Something like that. I completely agree with that. I remember people were talking about those early on in Overwatch, and I feel like a lot of people stopped having those discussions early on in Overwatch because we started playing professionally, and then you stop thinking about why is this silly versus, well, I have to get good at it. And the mentality changes really fast.
Yes.
No, I've always hated that.
Wow.
I've wanted to change it, but like
That's definitely been my mentality the entire time, is that when I'm kind of working as a part of a team or as a coach or whatnot, it doesn't matter what's fun. It doesn't matter if it's balanced. It doesn't matter if it's fair. you use what you have available to you to win. So.
And then 2CP is kind of just 2CP. We've been trying to fix that for a long time.
I mean, that's
and I think one of the reasons we tolerate 2CP so much is because it has gotten better. It's still awful, right?
Well, they
But
had
it
to
used to
implement
be
all of
way,
these.
way worse.
Well, they had to implement all of these insane mechanics to counter it.
Yeah, like the increasing spawn time, which is still the most like
It's the most hidden
opaque
mechanic in
and
the
hidden
game
thing
that
ever.
no one knows about if you're a casual player. It's like, oh, at a certain time period,
yeah.
if I sit on this point, the defense spawns increase at a linear rate, which I don't know about.
I'm actually
all
gonna
I know
throw
is
a
if I
poll
fight
up.
them long enough.
I'm going to throw a poll up. My chat might be biased because I've talked about this mechanic before. So the mechanic for 2CP defense, chats, I guess, plural, if you guys didn't know, was that if the attackers have more people on the point than the defenders on the second point, the defender's spawn time increases. And one of the crazy things about this is this happens on Assault at all. It's not just the second point. So if you can cap the first point after you had that player advantage, so if there was like one defender and they're trying like trickling on one at a time onto the first point, like 2CPA, but then they die, then that time doesn't reset. So if you move from first to second point fast enough, that increased defender spawn remains between first and second point. So the defenders are at a horrific advantage in this sort of snowball. So
It's the double snowball because it's the first, the spawn advantage snowball, and then the second, the ult advantage snowball if you win the first fight. It's really hardcore.
I'm just going to see how many people in my chat knew that. I've talked about it multiple times, and CarQ most recently.
Doesn't it also apply to payload?
Does it apply to payload? If it does, then I'm not aware.
Didn't CarQ put out a video on how it applied to payload?
CarQ did put out a video, but I don't remember if it was payload as well.
I honestly don't remember. And the fact is, if I'm a professional, former pro player, and I don't even know all the depths to this one mechanic that's that insane, isn't that just proof of how ridiculous this mechanic is?
Well, it's also
that's how far we had to go to stop spawn advantage in 2CP spawns instead of just being like, hey guys, why don't we just implement like different timered spawns at different areas of the map? It's like, I don't know.
Oh man. Oh man, what was I gonna say? Fuck. Shit. I lost my train of thought. Damn. Oh, just the documentation in Overwatch is just so minimal. And then apparently, like Hanzo's Dragon Strike was in the wiki as being 200 DPS for like over a year. And then only once Hanzo actually came into the meta and it started being like grab dragon every fight, that the pro teams took a look at this and they're like, guys, it's actually like 287.5 damage per second. So like we have the wikis and they're based off of patch notes, but the documentation itself is very inconsistent. So yeah, like if where would you find, is there anywhere on a Blizzard official documentation or website where it details the mechanic of the increasing defender spawn? I don't think there is.
Good luck. We just have asked CarQ to do some more videos.
Yeah, just get CarQ to make Blizzard's documentation easy.
So, I actually got I mentioned a stat about Koth snowballs in my. I have a more insane stat. Do you want to know about?
I would love
this
to.
message?
I would love to.
The team that gets the first kill in a Koth round wins it 61.5% of the time.
Yep.
Not even the team fight. It's the first kill.
Well, that's because once it becomes a 5v6.
It's, yeah, well,
it's
once
very
you get the
easy to
first
win
kill,
first
you
fight.
win those 70%. I think it's not 70. I think it might be a little less than that's how crazy the snowball gets on Koth.
So if you're Wizard, you're not trying to win games. You're just trying to not die first, and then statistically, you have the advantage.
I mean, I've always been on the belief that Overwatch is about not dying more than getting kills.
Yeah, a lot of people are. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of the cost snowball stuff I simplified in the video because the game duration makes it so that, I mean, I think everyone in the pro scene knows it, right? You win first fight, you have enough ults until it gets to almost 100-0, where if you play it properly, you have ult advantage. And then they have ult advantage for almost the 99-99 by that point, right? But then at the very last team fight of the entire round, you have ult advantage because you won the point first, so therefore you have that advantage in that last fight. And that's sort of the snowball I'm talking about relating to game duration. But the other one is just straight up positional advantage on a lot of these maps, where I think it was Beezy who did a breakdown on Koth win rates. And it was something like some of the maps, like Oasis, were like below 60% if you won first round. I forget which area of Oasis. But then Lijiang Control Center was something like 75% or higher in Overwatch League. Just because of the positional advantage.
It's because the maps are completely mirrored, so it's like you already know. And there's so many chokes on Koth that's like you only usually come from like 2 or 3 directions.
Did we cover everything?
Probably. I don't even. I
there's-
just want to go brush up on this spawn mechanic because I actually forgot whether or not it works on payload.
Bring
and I'm just like,
Karku's video up, the unofficial Blizzard documentation.
I guess so.
Yeah, right, man. Well, and one of the big things is that like a lot of the changes historically came in when like the pros themselves and the communities kind of aligned on what they wanted to have happen. But like right now, even between the three of us, like we can say that this is wrong or I don't like it or something needs to change, but without kind of everyone being on the same page and recognizing what the biggest thing we need to fix is and how, or at least kind of suggestions of the direction we want things to move in, it's going to be hard. I do not envy Blizzard's position right now.
No.
That's
I'm just of the
certainly
position
case.
where you can complain,
Yeah.
but if you don't offer like at least some guidance or solution of what you want, they could just change something and then you could just like be mad at them even more.
Eh.
Yeah. Do you think we're at the point where Blizzard would you be okay with Blizzard kind of radically changing Overwatch to like suddenly just something fundamental about the game change? Like would you be okay with them completely changing defender spawn as well as kind of like making ults on a timer instead of at a charge rate? Would you be okay with Blizzard just completely upsetting the current meta or understanding of the game just to see what happens? Kind of like how Fortnite with the glider redeployed. Just like fuck it, now gliders.
I would
redeployed.
love to see just a big Blizzard is usually really good at having just big patches just to mess with stuff. Where I look at their other games like Heroes and Diablo and other games where they just put like big 2.0 patches. They're pretty good when it comes to that. I didn't bring this up in the video, but it is another aspect of Blizzard that I think they like to get things too polished before they put stuff into the game a lot of the time. And so it means they move very slow. And this is why issues like, why did we have to have the Mercy meta for like 10 months? Why was that a thing? I swear that reduced most of my enjoyment of the game. If I was a support player and I didn't play Mercy, I would have probably just quit the game during that time period and just come back later, right? And I think sometimes they get overly cautious about stuff because they want to play it too safe.
Well,
So-
Mercy is one of the most loved heroes in the game. And when
D.Va.
she was made very meta, making her not meta caused the outrage.
But like it's funny because all of the casual Mercy players zerged the forums and were like, I can't believe they did this to Mercy. How could they? Blah, 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 right? But it's like they're doing all that to Mercy, but she actually became the greatest Mercy in the fucking world. Is this happening? Are we adding Felix?
Yes, he was in
If
my
he
Twitch
answers
chat. He
it.
said hi.
Okay, cool. I'm actually gonna use the bathroom then. I'll
Okay,
be right
well,
back.
it's just
I'm ready for the Felix podcast right now.
you're ready
Be right
for the
back.
Felix podcast.
Let's see what xQc has to say.
my chat tool has not been functional for like the last, I don't even know, 30 minutes. Oh man.
I mean, if you look at MOBAs, for example, we need an ice frog. We need an ice frog for Overwatch League. There's no balance changes for a bit, and then he just fucking rebalances everything, dude.
Yo,
Yo, what's
How you
up?
doing, Felix?
great. I just thought I'd join in, and since I didn't catch like most of the conversation, I'll just let you guys talk, and whenever I have like a good flow,
We're pretty much kind of done.
Have you seen Seagull's video?
I've seen it. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's as aggressive as you'll hear Seagull, I think.
That's what I said. But
What?
as aggressive as you'll hear Seagull be. He's just in the washroom or grabbing a drink, or I don't know. But
He went washroom.
You know what I want to say? I don't know if you guys talked about that, but it was fun for me to see. I'll fix the bug with something with the shatter, right? And I just realized that every couple months we'll have a patch that fixes Ryan shatter, but it only makes it worse, right?
yeah, they've
I'm like,
tried that
dude,
quite a few times now.
They just scrape the whole thing, dude. Just burn it to the ground and just build it up because that ability is just dog shit.
Well, the problem is we don't know if they have spaghetti code or not.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. It's 2 years. Hopefully they don't have that much tech debt, but I don't know. I have no idea about what the back end of Overwatch looks like or why exactly it's difficult for them to fix shatter. But
yeah, like last patch, they fixed where it would go like across small walls, right?
Yeah.
Like pillars and stuff. So
I remember when it climbed up walls.
yeah, 3 meters. It could
First
climb
point
to 3
Hollywood, dude.
meters.
So I'm on the top of the fucking thing and I get fucking shattered. I'm like, I'm in the air.
yeah. Did you could shatter like people like on top of like the coffee tables, right? From the bottom if you got the right
It
angle.
was fucking stupid.
But now it doesn't climb the smallest things like
Good.
a staircase sometimes. It's like, dude, seriously, man. Like I don't like this. Some people can jump over shatter sometimes. Like the other day I was getting like a 2-man shatter and my Zarya right clicked and they got moved into the air like just enough so they just dodged shatter. Like
They surf the Zarya right click, or like they just jump off the table, or like they do double jumps and you can't hit him, and he's nano bladed, and you're like, oh, cool.
yeah. We were just talking about
I'm pretty
how
sure.
I noticed last patch there's like a thing where it says oh, we fixed something with run shatter, but every couple of months or every month we get a patch to fix run shatter, but it only makes it always worse.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah,
Did you have
I
any
think.
Did you have any
Go ahead.
points when you watched the video that you were like majorly disagreeing with Seagull on?
No, none. I don't
None
think
at
it's.
all.
Wait, did
It's-
you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it. I think it's just hard to disagree with anything that someone says when it's about the state of the game or the patches and stuff. It's like actually hard to disagree. It's hard to find points like against it.
Did playing on Team Canada at all kind of make it harder to go back to ranked? Like, you're the guy who's probably surfing the barrier between two worlds more than anyone else. You stream more ranked than pretty much anyone else, and then you're also playing professionally, getting third at World Cup.
Dude,
But
maybe. Okay, this is a funny topic, but maybe it's because of who we were scrimming. UK, right?
Yeah.
But scrimming was very unenjoyable for me. When we played things like UK and stuff, just like hardcore, like hard forcing goats and.
I just
Like-
feel like, dude, if you're playing main tank in that goats meta, how much of the game comes down to what you do
Not a lot.
versus what your
Not a lot.
Zarya and your Brigida? Because you're kind of just, you show up and you're like, oh, I really hope my Zarya shields his Brigida stun or we're all dead. And then it's like, wow, I really hope my Brigida sets up my shatter, right? How much is in your control or what you actually do?
I feel like the way that I see it is that when we came into scrims, I felt like Fusions was like he was either a genius or his team was just doing all
he
the right things.
microed
Right?
everything.
Yeah, that's the only way it would work. That's what I realized. I realized that if I say back, don't use bubble, keep keep stun, we'll do that to burn their bubbles, and then we all go at once and we all do this and that. Yeah, I would have to do all of it, right? And I wouldn't have enough experience to do it myself, but like
Dude, I think tanks should do that more. Like on Fuel, we had this system with me and Unko a little bit where he'd just be like, dude, you just call my trance. And I was like, okay, because a lot of the time they don't see what you see, right? And then you get to choose how you want it to.
I've always been under the thought that tanks should be the most demanding because they are the ones that create all the space and determine the oh god, this is my very bad English coming through. Like the pace of a fight. There we go.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of times, I feel like, oh, dude, they're going way too hard. They're swinging like crazy. But they knew their timings and stuff. That's why it was so hard because you felt like they were doing mistakes, but it was so stupid. But they were actually doing something good. And it's like they're not going, and then they go hardcore. They stop going. They go hardcore, and then it's really hard to adapt. And as our main thing, it's like it's just kind of since we didn't know how to do it, and I didn't enough. It was kind of boring, dude. Like they get always comboed, and they were doing flank. They always did Bridget flank stuns with the shatters.
Oh.
And it was just kind of like, dude, like, I can't do anything. It's just kind of boring, man. And doing that like 6 hours, like 4 hours, like I was like, dude, I can't wait to get back to rank. But there's also this effect of like playing on a team. It's just hard to go stream and go play the game when you just play competitively, right?
The difference between very high competitive and ranked is ranked you don't have to think as much because everyone on the other team isn't thinking as much.
That's exactly
Whereas whereas
Just
in
mutually
very high,
agreed to not think.
very high level Overwatch, you have to think about everything. Whereas if you're thinking about less than the enemy team is thinking,
Hey,
then you're
Namrook,
going to
good
get
to see ya.
outflanked.
Yeah. Dude, a good example of that is when I set up like a flank shatter, right? And someone on our team sees me. And I always tell myself, yeah, he doesn't have a mic, right? So fuck it. He's not gonna communicate that I'm here. I just stay there and look at him, and still go with the flank shatter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in Overwatch, you're never gonna have solo carry potential ever. It's one of the reasons I never get adrenaline most of the time when I play Overwatch is because it's all teamwork and all like chance and kind of stuff. It's usually not like, hey, I took this matter into my own hand and I made it mine. Like in CS:GO, if I go into a 1v4 situation, I'm like, I know I can do this. I can clutch it out. I get that first kill, blood starts getting pumping. Get that second one, oh, we're in it. Then we're in that 1v1 situation. If I get that kill, I'm like, everyone was watching me and I got that guy. If I die, I'm like, oh, fuck, I could have had it.
Yeah.
Hands are shaking.
My heart's pumping. My hands are shaking. I'm still shooting. I'm still getting the headshots.
Feels good, man. Old memes.
Dude, that's a fossil meme.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking dinosaur.
FPS dog.
Yeah.
Host
Soul-
Jayne.
I was
Host
taking a
Jayne.
drink. Okay. Thank you for welcome to the friendly Overwatch debate with your host Jayne. I'm joined by Seagull, xQc, and Surefour. Next topic for today is going to be. I gotta
You
think.
sound
of
like a
something.
weatherman.
Oh yeah. I host Radio Plat Chat on my channel, but no.
Here, I'll put my weatherman mic on.
Well, what do you do to plat chat? You just say,
Oh,
listen, guys, you still have to improve, but you're just not good right now. But it'll
I
get
just
better.
radio DJ. We just listen to music, but
Okay.
no. With the, I guess Seagull's
Welcome
gonna
to
say,
the podcast.
Oh God, you weren't kidding.
Ooh, damn.
How is everyone doing today?
Why don't you talk like that all the time?
Are good.
Why don't you talk like that
Oh,
all the
because-
time? Man, you should.
I don't know. This is my normal voice.
Okay. No, I think we covered it all. Like, just shame you joined us a little bit late, Felix. But
Oh, that's all right. I just woke up.
yeah, you streaming later today, I assume.
Maybe later, maybe not.
There's not a day xQc doesn't stream.
It happens on occasion,
It's probably
Yeah.
when he's dying or something.
or getting deported back to Canada, one of the two.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I think that's it, guys. Thanks for the chat. Seagull, if you do want to join me for Pugs next week, we can kind of experiment with different rule systems, timer ultimates and ban systems if you're interested. Open invite. But yeah, I'll let you guys get back to it. You're not actually streaming right now, are you, Surefour?
No.
Just chilling? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't find any more Canadians to mob Seagull with, so. You handled the Canadian gang pretty well there.
Well, I was the devil's advocate. I was the one everyone could yell at.
Perfect. Well, you're used to that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
It's because I'm acoustic.
Have a good day and good luck with the rest of your streams. Cheers.
Thanks for
Bye.
that.